Good. Morten is the first chair, and then it will be Yogenda, and then it will be Thomas. And I think since Morten is the first chair, I would like to give the word simply to Morten. I would like to welcome you, everybody, back again. I think this will be the most exciting session of the afternoon. So I'm looking very much forward to hear about photovoltaics and materials and, of course, electronics and energy efficiency and so on. Morten, just take over.
Thank you, Horst Günther. So I will be chairing this first session. Welcome, everybody, to the session on photovoltaics for the next decade. I think people are still joining, so I will just briefly motivate the session. I don't think it needs a lot of motivation in this whole climate neutrality conference, because everybody is aware why renewable energy is so important. And I think everybody is also aware why PV is so important. I've seen some forecasts for how PV will develop towards 2050 to reach the Paris Agreement aims. And the forecast shifts between something like 10 times more installed PV capacity to 100 times more installed PV capacity. And 100 times more installed PV capacity, that's a lot of photovoltaics. And it puts the focus a little bit different, I think. It puts the focus on how do we develop really sustainable photovoltaics, maybe photovoltaics that we can recycle, but also how do we get photovoltaics into places where silicon cannot deliver. There's already, at least in Denmark, a lot of discussion about social acceptance of PV panels, where to put them. So this whole session is a little bit dedicated towards technologies that could go in and support silicon PV towards really reaching up to 100 times more by 2050. And for that, we have two excellent speakers for this session. And I think I would just start directly with introducing the first one. So it's really a pleasure for me to introduce Professor Aldo Di Carlo, who is director at the Institute of Structure of Matter at the CNR in Italy, and actually a real pioneer in photovoltaics. He has been running established a very competitive research group, CHOSE, at the University of Tor Vergata in Rome, and has been doing a lot of contributions both to fundamental part of research on PV, but also a lot of innovation aspects and spin-outs on hybrid photovoltaics especially. And Aldo is also leading new European projects, also City Solar, and I think maybe we will also hear a little bit about that in his talk. So Aldo, I think that the floor is yours, so we look very much forward to your talk on transparent photovoltaics. Please.
Okay, thanks a lot, Morten. Thanks for being here. It's a pleasure for me. I try to share the screen. Let's see if this works. I hope this is the right one. Yes. Okay, I go in presentation mode. Let me see if I'm able to do it. Okay, and I need to take out all this part. Okay, that's good. I hope you can see the monitor and the file. Okay, so I will discuss about transparent photovoltaics today, and mainly is the results of two big projects at the European level. One is the impressive project that was anticipating the follow-up, which is City Solar, as I will discuss in a moment. You see, I mean, also Morten was introducing, I mean, we have an urgent need for new technology for contrast the climate change. And, you know, photovoltaic is one of the technology, and also the use of photovoltaics in buildings is really urgent. So buildings use more or less the 40% of the energy. So at least at the European level, the 40% of European total energy consumption is represented by building, and they impact by almost 36% on the greenhouse gases emissions. So Europe has set already some years ago as a goal to change the way we think about buildings, moving to near zero emission building, and recently more and more toward positive energy building. So there is a need, and there is also a strategy behind this at the European level. So for this reason, we were spending some efforts, and you know, research, the efforts of research you spend during the night, the weekend. So it's a lot of our time to develop or to spend some our time on developing new strategy for using photovoltaics in buildings. So what is the idea? The idea is the following. So we have buildings everywhere, more and more actually. The floor used for buildings will increase in a steady pace in the next years. And the idea is to create something active, some wall that could generate energy in the building. So, and then to use the energy in the building itself. So you also avoid the transport of energy and use the energy, you generate the energy and use the energy exactly in the place where you need. So, however, to do this, I mean, we need to, sorry, I need to move something here. Let me see if I can move something out. I cannot do. Let me see. Okay, maybe. Okay, so anyway, so there are several options, I mean, to activate this process. I mean, of course, efficiency, color, stability are all important. I mean, transparency, if we want to use in glass facade, but also we need to motivate people to accept it. So we need to also to have a social acceptance of having a building element, an active building element. So also the norms, the rules should be changed, and this will also impact completely our societies. So it's not only, I want to say, it's not only a technological problem, but also it's a social problem. Concerning photovoltaic technology for transfer photovoltaic, so I will focus only on the transparent part of the building integration. Of course, you can integrate in buildings photovoltaics in different ways, also in the spandrel part. So the opaque part of the building is also a way to integrate, or in the roof. I will only focus on the transparent part, which is the more advanced, more tricky, the more critical from the technological point of view. So there are several technologies to integrate photovoltaics in facade, semi-transparent facade. For example, I show you the spectrum irradiance, so the sun spectrum we receive on the Earth. And then you can see that, I mean, to make something which is transparent, but at the same time to convert some light in energy, we can use, for example, the near UV part of the spectrum. So you have a near UV absorber. And in fact, I mean, there are some already reports showing that indeed you can use this part to make some cell with some efficiency and an average visual transmittance, ABT's average visual transmittance of 70%, for example. Of course, you can do the opposite. You can use near infrared absorber, and with near infrared absorber, you can harvest energy in the infrared part, and there are several technologies that could do this. Of course, it's quite selective. Conventional semiconductor will absorb from infrared down to visible and UV. You need molecules, more or less, to have a selective absorption in the infrared only. And for this reason, the two main technology are disolar cell and OPV, organic photovoltaics, both small molecule and polymers. Now you can easily understand that you can combine both in a sort of tandem application, so where you can absorb the UV part and the infrared part, and then you can harvest energy from both parts of the spectrum without touching or absorbing in the visible range. Of course, all these are ideal concept. One need to put this concept in practical application, which is quite demanding. But as you can see, as I was showing here, you can see that, I mean, indeed there are some applications and there are some results already in literature. And I would like to say that the 10.6% in the tandem made by Yen and co-worker is almost, I believe, is still the record for transparency, semi-transparent application with more than 50% AVT. Okay, so let me just tell you about the first example. So dye solar cell. Dye solar cell is very interesting because it's also bio-inspired. Dye solar cell comes from the photosynthesis. It's just a part of the complex process of the photosynthesis. So in the photosynthesis, we have a porphyrin molecule that absorbs the light. In the dye solar cell, we have a similar molecule that could be porphyrin, but could be also some more efficient molecule like bipyridine or ruthenium or other molecules. So the light is absorbed by this molecule, and then the charge is transferred to the electrode via some transporting element like titania or the electrolyte. So this kind of solar cell can be then used for building integration because you can easily tune the color. And then you can see several colors with several transparency. So if we make a plot, which is the typical plot in this kind of application, a plot of transparency, AVT, as a function of the efficiency, you can see that, I mean, by changing the dye 1, 2, and other dyes, you can change more or less this ratio between transparency and efficiency. For example, with 4% or 5% efficiency, you can get 30, 40% of transparency. So these results are results of some years ago. There was enormous effort and a breakthrough, I want to say, recently. This was made by the Fred Sauvage group, that they were able to get almost more than 3% efficiency with a transparency in AVT that was exceeding 75%. So this was a very big breakthrough. The molecule is a molecule synthesized by Claudia Barolo in Turin, is a near UV dye, and by using also a very transparent electrolyte, they were able to get this result. So you see there is a continuous effort, a continuous innovation in the field, and this is pushing, I mean, the ratio between transparency and efficiency. So at the very end, I believe in few years we can even more move these numbers to higher efficiency, keeping the same transparency. So this technology is quite commercial. It's quite could be exploited at the industrial level. Unfortunately, it's still not commercial. But you see, this was an effort we did for a very big facility company, which is called Perma-Stelisa. So this is a semi-automated pilot line where modules could be fabricated more or less in automatic way. You see here is the oven where you can synthesize the titania. Sorry for the sound. Let me just kick off the sound. And then you see this is the final part of the assembly, and the robot that takes these modules and assemble the modules all together to make the final panel. So you see the robot that takes the modules and make the final assembling for the dye solar cell panel. This is more or less what you can get. It's not too much transparent, but at that time we have some other milestone related to colors. And then you see you can change color more or less continuously from green to red. Still blue is a bit problematic. And this is the typical value of efficiency, around 5.5% on the module level, and AVT around 30%. Technology is quite rugged, robust. I mean, they can indeed sustain the IEC norm test. This, for example, is 185-degree thermal stress. It's not damp it, but you can do also the damp it test. And then you see you can keep the efficiency quite constant, even for 1,000 hours of stress. So even though the basic of the technology is molecule, as molecular technology, you can indeed then stabilize this technology without a problem. Of course, stabilization of the technology came out about after a big effort, industrial effort made by more or less 20 people for 5 years. So it comes not for free, but is doable. The next step, actually, after also the solar cell, I mean, was the introduction of perovskite, halide perovskite, and this was more or less motivated by the development made by the solar cell. Halide perovskite is a quite complex material, and then you can see that you can change a lot of elements inside the crystal structure. And one of the main elements is the lead, which is indeed sometimes a problematic for because it's lead. But then other elements, the halides or the other cations, can be changed to tune the properties of this material. And then indeed you can see here. So in the first plot, I show you the absorption coefficient for as a function of the energy of the photon for different concentration of chlorine. So I'm now focusing on this kind of perovskite, methylammonium lead, bromine chloride, because this kind of perovskite has a large gap for making UV absorber. So as you can see, I mean, changing the chlorine content, you can change the gap from 2.4 to almost 6 electron volt. So you are moving the gap toward blue or near UV. This is what you can get with this perovskite absorber. This is the power conversion efficiency and as usual, the transparency, the AVT. And look at on the top curves here, you see that you can get something more than 50% transparency with an efficiency which is between 6 and 8%. So it's quite interesting to have a technology, a solid state technology, is not molecular technology, solid state technology that indeed could achieve more than 50% transparency. And this is the plot summarizing all the results published up to date in literature, and you can see efficiency and transparency. And the results we recently obtained was in the range here, so quite overcoming the results published in literature so far. So it's a new strategy to get good transparency and at the same time good performance. You can scale up these to large area. And you can see here modules made by perovskite materials with different concentration of chlorine, and this quite large area. And scaling up does not reduce too much the efficiency of the solar cell. For example, for the more transparent, from a small area, you get 6.2% efficiency. On larger area, you can get 5.3% of efficiency with the transparency, which is almost 60%. So you can also use blade coating, not typical laboratory deposition. And then this is a recent result for the City Solar project, that I will introduce in a moment. So the idea now is to move from single junction to multi-junction, because in this way we can improve the efficiency. In the single junction, we are limited by the Shockley Quasar limit. But if we move in 2 junction, 3 junction, we can improve further the efficiency of the solar cell. So for this reason, we were considering a tandem, a top perovskite cell and a bottom, for example, disolar cell, with different configuration and also optimizing, reducing the number of interlayer to reduce the parasitic losses. At the moment, we have just the first attempt for the disolar cell, perovskite tandem, which is the one on the right. But what the simulation can tell us what could be the final goal if we optimize all the process and the cell. So if we are able to get a perovskite solar cell with efficiency around 8%, with a transparency between 65 and 70. So we are not so far from this goal. And if we are able to get a disolar cell, which has an efficiency around 6% with a transparency of 55%, and at the moment, this is the most critical part of this development. So it is not easy to get to 6% with 55% of transparency. So if we sum these two, then we can get a final tandem solar cell that has an efficiency close to 14% with 55% of transparency. So this is quite interesting, very critical, very difficult to achieve, but not impossible. So it's just part of an optimization. The strategy has been defined, but we need to optimize. However, we found a different way to get even more. And this is the City Solar project. So we find that, I mean, we can indeed a little bit alleviate or reduce the difficulties of making the tandem solar cell by replacing disolar cell with a well-developed strategy of polymeric solar cell. So this is the main goal of the City Solar. So City Solar, I would like to demonstrate a power conversion efficiency larger than 50%, with an average visual transmittance larger than 50%, and with the color neutrality, or as close as to color neutrality. So the idea is to laminate together a top perovskite solar cell with a bottom organic solar cell, and then to create the City Solar technology. So to do this, I mean, we assemble a dream team, I would like to say, comprising by academy, university, research centers, and company. So a small medium enterprise company, which is Brilliant Matters, and two large company, ADF and Eni, which are also pushing a lot this green transition, coming from other few fossil energies. This is what we are setting up, or we set up actually. The project was running for 9 months so far, and the City Solar has a quite robust technology. It's based on quite robust technology. So we will use a near UV perovskite absorber, so that could also absorb a little bit in the visible range, but with a very low absorption. A bottom near infrared OPV absorber. We will have light management. Light management will be very important via DBR or up conversion, and this will be mainly done by Morten Group in SDU. And also we have a new way to integrate the top cell, the top module with the bottom modules, with the mold back strategy. So we set up to do this with the setup multi-scale facilities. From we will use material processing, automatic material processes made in Germany, in FAU, with Amanda platform. And so also for the characterization, we have a multi-scale characterization. I will not enter too much in these details of the project, but you can see light management is very important. And these are, because this will, as I will show you in a moment, this will make the difference with respect to other projects. Light management will reflect part of the infrared radiation back to the cell, so we can absorb more and more the infrared radiation. And this is, you see, this is the setup we actually Morten will use to realize this light management part of the cell. That, as I say, this is the real further step we added to the project. So now, so development is under progress. So you need to check the result in a couple of years. But anyway, so we did a very thorough simulation activity, and indeed we were changing the thickness of OPV, perovskite, changing the configuration of the tandem, and so on and so forth. And at the very end, having also some experimental data, so the simulation were also tuned on experimental data. So the 50% should be achievable, and then you can see that the photonic crystal, anti-reflection, so all the light management part, which is the green and blue part, are impacting very much for the final efficiency of the solar cell. So at the very end, I mean, these will be the results. I mean, we will really push further the state of art for transparent photovoltaic. So I hope, but I'm quite confident that this will be achieved. So stay tuned. We will try to show it with a real demonstrator. So I could conclude now. So build integration of photovoltaics, as I said, is an essential step toward green transition. New generation of material and architecture permit to create selective absorber for transparent photovoltaics. And several technologies are available: dye solar cell, perovskite, polymeric solar cell. So they need to combine together to get indeed to exceed the Shockley-Queisser limit for transparent photovoltaics, and creating a transparent photovoltaic with an efficiency. So also those who are quite reluctant to introduce this active element in the building will at the very end find an advantage to use the photovoltaics. So I really like to thank Fabio Matteocci, who did a lot of experimental activity in the field of transfer photovoltaics in the CHOSE group in Rome, and also the two projects, Impressive and City Solar, that are funding all this effort. Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot, Aldo, for this very nice talk. And I think the idea was there would be some joint question session later, but I think we should already now, if there are some questions for Aldo, then please raise your hand. Or I see already Horst Günther is sitting with a raised hand. So yeah, Horst Günther, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Aldo. This is really impressive project. I'm really looking forward to the outcome. I was especially impressed by you saying that you would have some color neutral solar cells. So in which range do you think you will have the color neutrality? And at the end, you are also saying that color tuning can be an additional value. Sure, but does that not affect heavily the efficiency and other parameters of the solar cells? So how free are you really? Because I know the building integrators, if you talk to them, they tell you you should have blue solar cells because that's how these skyscrapers should look like. And especially blue seems to be complicated.
Yeah, Horst, I mean, you pick up the most difficult question, of course. I mean, so color neutrality is quite difficult. I mean, maybe you can get efficiency and transparency, but color neutrality. So the color neutrality, you need to be in the center of this curve. So where you have more or less the white here. So, and all we do is move toward, yellow part, orange yellow part. So this is quite very, very demanding. In the project, we were giving some numbers, some KPI for our color renderings index. I mean, that should be around these points, but I mean, we were a bit vague on this. We call just general color neutrality without giving too much numbers, because we know that this will be the most difficult part, to give all the three numbers: transparency, efficiency, and color rendering number. So we give some numbers, but I mean we are quite vague. And that's the main point. I believe effort should be really put to reach this color neutrality. So if we are able really to shift more and more the infrared part in the infrared and the blue part in the UV, so we can reach this kind. But of course, efficiency will reduce. I mean, so we cannot do too much in the UV because the sunlight in the UV is quite limited. I believe we can do more in the OPV part. So if we, and we are discussing with Morten the follow-up, if we are now able to develop materials that could extend absorption range in the infrared, even deep infrared, then I believe we can get this color neutrality, keeping good efficiency. So, but I would like to say that this is really the next step. And as I said, with Morten, we are discussing. Concerning the colors, I mean, the blue, you are right. So the blue is what if for colored wind of is what the architects sometimes they ask. And this is still a problem. Also for OLED, blue was the main problem, as well for solar cell. I believe blue is still one of the problems. Of course, one can use light management, drag reflector to get some bluish colors. But I mean, with the limit of the light management, angles, and so on and so forth. But I agree with you. I mean, this is also a very interesting. So for colored photovoltaic, I believe effort should be put to get blue.
Yes. A follow-up question, of course, would be then color stability. So that's probably also something which needs more research efforts, but that's also good if there's something to do.
Yeah. When I say blue, it's for the stability. I mean, you can get blue square for disolar cell. You can get a fantastic blue square.
Like the stability you showed, like 1,000 hours.
Yeah, but they stay 10 hours. Okay.
Yes. Okay. Good. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. I don't know if there's another question for Aldo at this point. I think otherwise, maybe also due to time, we would move on to next speaker, and then we could see if there are some joint questions at the end of the sessions for both Mathilde and for Aldo. So I would my pleasure to introduce the next speaker, Mathilde Berger, who is a project manager at Amor Solar Power Films, and Amor is a company actually realizing commercially currently some of these new emerging technologies is focused on organic photovoltaics, so not the tandem we heard about, but organic photovoltaics, and has real product and a lot of exciting things, I think, for the future on this whole route to exploitation of this new PV. So we look forward to hear your talk on the progress from your side and what you expect from the future. So Mathilde, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Morten. Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining this talk today. So I'm Mathilde Berger, and I'm project manager at Amor Solar Power Film. And today the talk is about organic photovoltaics, and especially about customized integrated films to energize any kind of surfaces. So as previously introduced, we all are aware that the energy demand worldwide is increasing. This is not a surprise for anyone. But we also have to take into account that in the future, the population will mainly live in cities. Living in cities means having buildings, so a high density of population for a really small area, development of urban infrastructure, such as public lightnings, and also developing a lot the electromobility. So if we're showing at tomorrow's picture for the society, we'll have a really high density of population at one central point with a really high energy demand but no chance to bring there some power plants. We won't put a solar farm in the city. We won't put wind turbine in the city. We might can do put some more traditional solar cells on rooftops, but as said, the buildings are more built in the height than on the width, so the energy generation is then limited. So it means that the solution which we are finding today as energy to produce some energy are not suitable for all the needs that we'll have tomorrow. So that's why we need to develop more and more technologies which can fit with those needs. And that's what we're doing at Armor Solar for the films with our product called ASCA technology. Our aim is then to energize all kinds of surfaces to be used anywhere and at any time. Few words first about the Armor Group. So the Armor Group is a French company which is implemented worldwide and which is today the world leader in thermotransfer films. So the printing of barcodes. We can think that it has not a lot to do with OPV, but you will see that a printing company is perfectly suitable for OPV. And this company is then, of course, industrial printing, but has also developed some other branches in new technologies and renewable energies, such as film batteries, 3D printing, and the OPV manufacturing. What are the OPV? So OPV stands for organic photovoltaics, and photovoltaics, we all know what it means, and the organics here refers mainly to the family of chemical components which are used in the products. So these components are mainly carbon-based. And what we're doing is that we're printing the solar cells, which has something to do with the nature of our mother company. And we are printing thanks to a roll-to-roll principle. So pretty easy process. We're working at ambient temperature, ambient atmosphere, ambient pressure. So something which is really an easy process and not too energy consuming process. We are also not using any vapor deposition process. It's then screen printing. And what we're printing is some liquid polymer semiconductors. So the organic component I've introduced before. And we are printing a bulk heterojunction solar cell. What is mainly important here is not the word, but the thickness. We are printing layers which are only a couple of 100 nanometer thick, which gives us in the end a really thin solar panel. That's why they're also called thin film solar panels. And we're printing on PET foils. PET is nothing more than the plastic used in water bottles. It means that we have a really good knowledge how to process it, but we also know how to recycle it. And in the end, as we are printing really thin layers, the major component of our solar cells would be PET foils. And what we're getting in the end are flexible solar panels. So kind of a piece of plastic with some colors inside, which doesn't look like that's full of technology, but the man you're seeing here is no more than Alan J. Heeger, who won the Nobel Prize in 2000 for his work on polymer semiconductors. So even though it looks simple, it's something which is full of technology and which we continue to develop every day. The OPV has then certain advantages. They are transparent, they can be colored, and with OPV we are doing indeed a lot of blue color. We are flexible, and they are also super lightweight due to their structure. However, this is not enough. This is just a technology. This is not enough to be able to implement solar technology in our everyday life. We are missing something for the social acceptance, and we are missing something because this is just a technology. This is not a full project. And what we are doing in order to bring solar panels on our everyday life is that we are using designable modules. So thanks to the printing process, we can do any kind of shapes of the modules, any kind of forms, we can tune the color. And this means that we can play a lot on aesthetics of the solar module and also have a really good leverage for social acceptance. If we're thinking about a glass facade, no one really wants to have a glass facade with something which doesn't look good, which is not super semi-transparent. But whenever we can include and combine it with design and start really making the glass facade as a piece of art, then suddenly the interest is way higher to introduce these solar cells. But in order to implement those solar cells on, for example, a glass facade, it also needs to be integrable. And here, integrable has several meanings. It can be, of course, first the integration into a material. And today we're capable of integrating the solar cells onto or into any kind of materials. So it can be into glass, polycarbonate, textile application. We can work with adhesive. We can integrate them into processes with plastics and so on. We're also working a lot on the integration of the system, because whenever we're talking about a module which needs to be nicely integrated, which needs to fit into some projects or to blend in its environment, we can't have a lot of cabling being seen everywhere. So we're also putting a lot of effort on the cabling to be as transparent, as non-seeable as possible. And the final thing for integrable is that it has to be integrated into its environment. And the OPV, one of the big advantage is that they're working thanks to diffuse light, meaning that they do not need the direct irradiation of the sun to have good performances. So they can be integrated no matter their orientation. It can be in facade, it can be in shaded spaces, but they're also working with artificial light, meaning that they can be used for indoor usage. Indoor usage next to a window, but also in lower light environments like office light. And in the end, the modules start to be really active at 200 lux, which represents pretty low luminosity. So in an office, we're usually around 500 lux, for example. And all of this combines makes that we are able to provide some solutions where the OPVs are not seen as a technology or as a project around which we need to work, but the OPV can be seen as components which are then blend into the project and which are adapted to the project or to the application we're talking about. And this wouldn't make any sense if those technology were not sustainable. So the OPV materials are made without any toxic materials, and they're also recyclable. And their life cycle is also important because their energy payback time. Don't know why it's doing this. Their energy payback time is only of a couple of weeks. I'm sorry, I have no idea what's happening. They are only a couple of weeks, whereas the silica, the classical silica cells are about a couple of months. And this is also shown by the fact that we received some prizes, the last one being the German Sustainability Award in 2020, which shows that there is indeed a huge interest for the future and for a sustainable future in such kind of technologies. Now that we've talked a lot about what is OPV, I think the best way is to have some examples of applications and to show how we are bringing those modules into surfaces and different applications. As mentioned, as we are seeing the OPV more as a component, we can be able to work in several fields. So the BIPV with the structure that were mentioned before, but also in mobility or in sensors. For sensors application, I'm now going to present a few of our realizations. So the last one we did was rooms, which is in the end a platform and a product which managed a meeting room. and which can now be only powered thanks to an OPV module. Usually the interest in sensors is to reduce the needs of battery, so by removing the battery from the system or by enlarging the lifetime of the battery. When we're thinking about a building which would have, I don't know how many light sensors, for example, they're all running with a battery. And if instead of going in the building, changing the battery each and any time the battery is empty, they're usually having a maintenance where they're changing every 2 or 3 years all the batteries of the building, even though they're still working. Thanks to an OPV, for example, the battery can be continually recharged, and then we can reduce the waste generated with the frequent change of batteries. We are also active into transport, so it can be camping, trucks, sails for boats, and there's a lot of applications there. And as the modules are also lightweight, flexible, designable, we active a lot into the textile application. And one of the last projects was the realization of wearables with Kitty Young, who has a brand which is doing a lot of smart textiles. So here we have a solid dress with which we can recharge a phone, for example. Then with indoor usage, we have the examples of office curtains, where we are always in between having some lights going through the office, but also not having too much light because of refractions and keeping the temperature pretty low. And those kinds of curtains could be the perfect application. And usually a curtain is more or less a dead surface. It doesn't bring anything, but here it can bring a lot of energy during the day. So we are bringing some additional functionalities into devices which were not used before. Some other smaller application like vertical gardens, from which the pumps are self-powered by the OPV. Some consumer electronics such as solar lamps, but it can be used in any kind of devices such as headsets, keyboards, and the like. We have also been doing some urban furniture, so we're going a bit bigger in projects. So the palm tree that you're seeing on the right side, it's not just a palm tree, it's used for public lighting, Wi-Fi router, and also it has some USB plugs into the trunk so that people can recharge their phone. And if we're seeing the palm leaves here, we can really understand where there is no limit for design and integration. So there's so much no limits that we can also fake some silica cells which needed to be transparent on the left side on the flag. This can also be bench with public lightnings and so on. And then we're entering more into the building projects. So here's the first OPV project that we installed. So it's the Mainova term in Frankfurt. This installation was supposed to last only a couple of months, but in the end it lasted for a couple of years, and it has been destroyed because there was a storm damaging the complete tower. Other than this, no damages were shown on OPV. And these were the very first OPV, so still with red colors, stripy layout, a bit far away from what we're doing today. Then the first project where we really entered with design, integration, and was the solar trees at the German pavilion for the Expo 2015 in Italy. So here we worked really together with the architect in order to bring the designable and the customization at the front page. So here we are seeing all the OPV modules in the hexagonal shapes, the small ones and the bigger ones as well. And they're all integrated into a steel net to really get the feeling that the modules are flying, and really lightweight installation. What we also cannot see here is all the cabling between the modules. So this comes back to the fact that we also are working on the system, and that the modules we are working on the interconnections, that everything is, the aesthetic of a project is not ruined by the cabling. And as those trees were pretty nice, they've also been replanted in Germany. So we reworked the integration so that the trees can last for 10, 20 years more without having any problems. And this picture, even though it looks like a rendering, it's an actual picture from the installation, which is in Darmstadt. A Klima Pavilion that we realized, this was also an installation in Germany. And this Klima Pavilion was a temporary installation. The OPVs here were the only solar technology we could have, which could reach their energy payback time by the time of the installation. So this shows how quick we can produce the energy which was needed for its creation. So in the end, the OPVs here were having a positive impact in terms of energy. And for this kind of umbrellas, we used some thicker PC laminations because the structure could not support the weight of glass. A project that we did out of Europe, so this time it was in Africa, in Addis Ababa for the African Union. And most of the time when we're talking about selling some projects, we always hear that OPV are super expensive. Not always. This project, we got this project because of the price. The reason is really simple behind. If you want to integrate some solar modules which can be laminated into glass under such a glass rooftop at such a height, the cost of the installation are really, really high. And this is shown by the fact that the complete cost of the project, so OPV manufacturing installation system, were lower than the installation cost for glass panels with silica cells inside. So when we're talking about cost, it's always about talking about the complete system and not only about a few parts of it. We also did some installation more artistic, so such as this biennale in Seoul, where we combined OLED and OPV, all installed on some local materials. So the complete installation is made onto bamboo sticks, where the OPV were generating some energy to allow the lighting of the OLEDs during the nights. We also did some integration with ETFE, so a new kind of material which is more and more used for building applications. And we also doing some glass integration. So the modules here are laminated between the glass, and it means that the OPV are not really an additional part, but they're completely part of building materials. So we're more talking about glass panels, which by chance produce some energy because they have some OPVs inside, than an OPV which needs to be added somewhere on the structure. And talking about more opaque surfaces, we're also working with concrete, such as a thermal insulating facade, or some OPV integration with freeform concrete, where we can still keep the semi-transparency if we want of the OPV by combining it with a steel structure in any kind of usage. Some of our more recent projects, which really enhance and highlight the fact that modules and OPV modules can be integrated anywhere and should be integrated as a component and can be adapted to the product, are those balcony balustrades. So this is a new building which aim was to have a positive energy coefficient. So on the rooftop we already have some complete solar rooftop, but this was not enough for the building, so they had to use the facades to generate energy. And where to use the facade? This was on the glass balustrades, because this has not only the purpose of generating some energy, but that was also a wish from the architect to have some glass balustrades, but to keep the aesthetical unit of the building. Usually when you're seeing a building with glass balustrades, people want to keep their privacy in their flats. So you have one neighbor who is spreading some plants, the other one some textiles, the last one some bamboo sticks and the like, and you're completely losing the aesthetical cohesion of the building. Whereas if you're using balustrades like here with OPVs inside, you're keeping the unit because all balustrades are the same. You're keeping your privacy because people cannot look through your balustrade, and you're keeping the light because nonetheless the modules are semi-transparent. So when you're on the balcony, you can still have some light. Another project that we delivered pretty recently was the Dutch pavilion for the Expo 2021, where the solar rooftop was realized thanks to OPV, because here the aim was to have a really sustainable pavilion, which won several prizes for its sustainability. And that's why we've been also called there to help with the solar rooftop, because we can keep the semi-transparency, we can have a freedom of design, and we can use a pretty sustainable technology there. So this was to give a bit different ideas and different insights of what is possible with OPV and how solar modules in general can be integrated in our future, and that it's not only about the technology but about the integration, and that tomorrow it will certainly be used more and more because we'll be able to use them in any kind of surfaces. So thank you for your attention during the talk, and of course if you have some questions, please feel free to ask them.
Thank you very much, Marcel, for this very nice talk about the commercial OPV and all the progress that is made there as well. So the floor is open. We have time for a few questions. So if there are any questions out there, I see Hans Günther again has a question. So
if somebody else has a question first, it's also okay.
I could have a
That's
question,
not the
but
case,
I will
then
take it
just
after
ask
you.
for-
So please
Yes,
go ahead.
okay, that's fine. But I have a very simple question. I think thank you very much for this nice talk. I think it looks like OPV is now something that one could buy also as a normal citizen. And my question would be a little bit in the direction of who's installing the OPV. If I, for example, as a normal citizen would buy these things for my balcony, and who is in fact buying the things from you? Is it directly the architects or the big companies, or is it also individuals that come and just buy something?
So here, if we're talking especially with glass integration, as I explained, we are just part of the glass component. So in the end, it's going to be the facade installer who's going to purchase it.
Yeah, okay, this is for the new building. So you make a new facade or something. But if I just want to, on my balcony, if I want to set up something like that.
So at the moment, we are working only with companies. So the question is not really asked yet, but we're sure that in the future there will be the business with customers, and here we will be still the only OPV providers. And if you, as it's an integration, then it will be most likely someone who will have as a product some balcony balustrade to who we will provide some OPV cells and will do and sell them as products.
Okay. And you will give some guarantee for the lifetime of your panels?
Yes, with our partners, we are discussing always guarantees depending on the projects, what they will be used for, and what guarantees are needed.
Okay. Thanks.
So I have maybe one. More questions?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I have one question. Maybe I don't know. Maybe to both of you. I think you showed very nicely, of course, what these new technologies can do. It's a more general question. What these technologies can do compared to silicon PV in terms of transparency, lightweight, indoor, and so on. And even though they are commercial and you have commercial OPV, a lot of things are happening on research development scale still, right? So, you know, dye-synthesized solar cells that you show, Aldo, has had several rises in performance. OPV is booming a lot recently. Perovskite is increasing even more and even coming close to silicon PV. So I guess my question would be, how do you see the future of that? Is it like there will be development on several of these technologies, and there will be winning ones. It will be a combination of technologies. Will some of them outperform silicon? Will it be a mixture? Can it be combined? So if one should think photovoltaics of the next decades, so ahead, how do you see that with all this progress that is happening with these new technologies? Will it be more a mixture of PV technologies compared to what we see now?
So if I can give my word here, for me it will be a combination of several solar technologies, because as we've seen, each and any of them have different advantages, different properties, and this should be a mix of all of them in order to widen the range of photovoltaic usage. But saying that one will outperform or only one will be there in the future, I doubt so, because they're so much different and they can have so different usage that we would need all of them in order to cover the wider range as possible.
Thank you. I don't know if you have comments, Aldo, but then you get the last word.
I completely agree with Matilde. There is, of course, I mean, we cannot control in Europe, we cannot control the whole supply chain of silicon photovoltaic. So this is, I believe, when we will scale up to the numbers you were telling at the very beginning. So we could have shortage of wafers for silicon, probably. You know, we saw now for microelectronics, but I mean, probably this could come from silicon, or I mean, at least we cannot really handle it. So I believe the development of alternative solution that could reach the efficiency of silicon or even more, or they can be combined together, I believe is quite strategic for Europe. I mean, also to have a complete supply chain in European hands.
Okay, thank you. And I think due to time, I think we should move on to the next session. So I would like to thank both speakers again, Aldo and Matilde, for very nice contributions to the session here. Thanks a lot.
Thanks. Thanks for.
Thank you for the invitation.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
And then I would pass the word on to Jogenda, who would be chairing the next session. Next session, I think, is on smart green materials. So please, Jogenda, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, Morten, for organizing it well in time. And of course, materials are the most important thing around us, and we always need to talk about. We need to learn about different kind of material for different applications. I'm very happy to introduce at least a class of green materials here. We will know what do we mean by green. And we have two very great speakers here, Dr. Ajit Kaushik from Florida Polytechnic University and Professor Ho Jun Kim from DGIST. Good morning, Ajit, and good evening, Kim. Sorry, I am putting you both at different landscapes. So Ajit, a very short introduction, did PhD in India and then moved to Florida International University in 2011 around, and after working quite long time over there in different capacities, he was moving as a tenure track faculty to Florida Polytechnic University recently, where he is developing his own group, and he is very well known in the field of nanomaterials based sensors, especially biosensors, chemical sensors, and even in the drug delivery and biomedical engineering. And although a lot has been done in the direction of nano-based sensing, plasmonics, and several, but there are a lot of open challenges from the material point of view and from the sensing point of view. And I think we need to kind of closely discuss at the interface how both are correlated with respect to each other, and what we should focus on, what we should do, what we should not do, at least. So Ajit is going to tell a little bit about the scope of material. Just the last thing to add, Ajit is really very productive researcher, cited more than 8,500 times with that index of 50, which is really remarkable. And he has published almost in very high impact factor magazines. So the floor is yours, Ajit. Please go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Yogi, for very Nice introduction. Let me find my presentation. Yes, here we go. Yes, so very good morning from Florida Polytechnic University. And this is really a very early morning for me, but I'm okay after 2 cups of coffee. And I will be talking about green materials and how they can be useful. As Yogi introduced well, I came from Florida International University, where I was more into drug delivery to the brain, and at the same time, developing sensing prototypes for managing infectious diseases based on an efficient sensors and IoT. And over the time, I realized that the concept of therapeutics, treatment, pharmacology, and sensing itself does not change much. But over the time, we are having very exciting development, which are accepted globally. So what makes a difference? I think materials makes a difference. How we can make a system which is based on reduced form factor approaches. I learned this very well because since 10 years, I'm working with electrical engineering department as a collaborator, and they always talk about these things. And if we see recent development which are happening in healthcare management are gonna be based on either smartphone or smartwatch. And what are these? These are different interfaces, which depends on the features of materials, signal amplification, tuning of the signals, and how we can correlate signal variation with reference to a targeted application. So this is like broader picture, but if we look into everything has a cost. It's not by money, dollars or euros. Sometimes we pay differently that we don't see, and these side effects appears over the time. We are not doing justice with the nature. We are making high performance material, either using chemical method or physical methods. Do we ever think about how many acid, bases, highly toxic, hazardous materials we do use in the making of these nanomaterials? Where they go? We got the material, where the waste goes. I don't think any company in the world is capable to cover 100% safety aspects while making a nanosystem. Okay, now the point comes, company debates, oh, we are doing this, we are doing that. I understand. How about the side effects we are getting in our ocean, environment, air, food? Why this is happening? People are talking about global warming. Why this is happening? Why do we like air condition if we know that they are producing chlorofluorocarbon, which is damaging ozone layer, and we are getting more cases of cancer because UV content is increasing in our everyday life? So anyway, I'm not here to debate what is good, what is not. I'm a very small guy, and my focus of research is mainly academic, student oriented. But being a faculty of engineering campus, we have to project broader picture to the student so that they can decide their career based on the significance of a particular field or their own personal interest. So I am at Florida Polytechnic University. This is a very brand new University of Florida State, and we are only dealing with engineering education, mainly electrical, mechanical, chemical, and and computer science database. And our focus is to give best engineering education, which is based on applied aspects. So in this direction, my research here is making nanosystems for biosensing applications, for drug delivery, and now with reference to the environmental monitoring. So I'm thankful to Yogi for organizing this wonderful conference, because climate neutrality is really a very big concern all around the world, and people are working seriously in this direction. This is really motivating, and as a faculty, we have to introduce this concern or the usefulness of making good systems to the student, so that our student can make a difference when they graduate or join different jobs with reference to their interest. So me, with reference to my work, I am exploring green chemistry for the detection of pollutant and also to eradicate water contaminants like dye and other things. And my focus is ultimately, why don't we make a material which is green in the sense we are making a material either using biosources or using safe solvents or without using heavy stuff like high temperature or longer preparation methods, so that we can cut loose using of hazardous materials or energy consumption or controlling the waste to the ecosystem. So in my research, I'm fortunate to have Yogi as my collaborator and also a very well-known group from Punjab University, India. They're really good in chemistry as well. So we three doing something to make a difference. So, and our university has a very brand new applied research center. This is new, and the focus of this research center is promote science for next generation. And we have a close association with Phosphate Institute of Research. This is an institute funded by Florida State, and they also deals with environmental stuff. So we are making an environment at Florida Polytechnic University where companies are coming, and environmental aspects is one of the major concern. Mainly we are academic, but recently we have put a lot of efforts to for awareness point of view and to make a difference by research and developing technologies. So me, briefly, I am here exploring nanosystem for biosensors, and the focus is, can we detect a disease at very early stage? If we can do so, we can monitor a disease. At the same time, we are developing nanosystem which can carry a drug to the brain. This delivery of the medicine to the brain is very recommended in case of dementia or any diseases which are very common in elderly population, because these diseases do not have any treatment. We can manage this, and to manage this we need help of either by nature, by having some nutraceuticals, but these compounds are very big, they do not go to the target site. So either we have to apply more green chemistry to reduce their size, or use a green carrier which can take a drug sent to the brain. So in this direction, I am doing so. Considering the brain diseases, we have developed magnetoelectric nanoparticles. They are very engineered nanoparticles. They have a core shell structure. Core is magnetic, shell is piezoelectric. We need this assembly because these type of nanoparticles are stimulation responsive. So one single particle can give us many useful properties which can be controlled for various applications. I selected this material because of 3 reasons. When I stimulate this material by AC magnetic field, it appears that this material produces electric field and acoustic at the same time. If a material is producing acoustic at the surface of cell, then I can have very rapid cell uptake without any receptor. This is one part. Second, these nanoparticles can be surface functionalized, which can be used to bind the drug on top of the surface. And because they're magnetic, so we can control their navigation through external magnetic force, and I can navigate this travel to the brain, and we have demonstrated this. Second part. Third part is releasing of the drug should be controlled. If I'm having a problem, then drug should release in my system, because it has been proven that most of the drugs which are developed using artificial methods had side effects. So magnetoelectric nanoparticles are AC magnetic field responsive, and they change their surface properties which help the control release of the drug. And we have also demonstrated this in animal model and also in vitro model. There's a one more bigger picture. If we are having a magnetoelectric nanosystem, which can provide desired drug delivery in controlled manner, producing acoustic and electric field. Overall, I am believing that we can also use these nanoparticles for the brain stimulation, which is the focus of many experts to achieve deep brain stimulation in a controlled manner. So whatever happening right now is like we are applying a very bigger ultrasound type of things which actuate neurons, but maybe we don't need that much force, we need less. So we can have nanocarriers sitting in the brain, we apply external force, and these nanoparticles generate this response at nano level, like nanoamps or some other parameters can be useful to actuate the neurons. So, but the problem is that these type of nanoparticles are very difficult to make. It's a very step process. It needs a lot of chemicals, and the synthesis of these nanoparticles took 3 days. So my project is I want to make green magnetoelectric nanoparticle that can be used as a manipulative system for healthcare management. The second part is the biosensor. Biosensor are the analytical devices that convert a biological response to a measurable signal. So we are measuring a signal that tells us how sick someone is or how medicine is working on a particular patient, if the marker is going up or down. So biosensing has a standard practice. It need a surface which is conductive, mostly made by fabrication methods, and then we need a nanoparticles on top of it so that we can immobilize respective antibodies to detect antigen. So we have demonstrated this technology with reference to cortisol, a psychological stress biomarker, second Zika virus, and infectious diseases, which is very serious, because if a pregnant woman is infected by Zika virus, then the baby will not have a developed brain. This is called microcephaly diseases. So we have developed immunosensing platform for the detection of Zika virus. And recently we have done some work where we are projecting detection of coronavirus using a very miniaturized sensing chip, where the base is fabricated interdigitated platform, which is functionalized by a nanosystem. Over there, we can detect virus protein at picomolar level. So advantage, if we can detect picomolar of a virus protein, then we can do diagnostics at early stage. And at the same time, most of the drug which are approved or therapeutics which are optimized does not make a drastic change. The virus level changes at very low level. If I can detect the change of that low level, it means I can understand the progression of the infection and also understand the effectivity of the drug against the infection. So we have demonstrated this. And also recently we developed a sensor which is capacitance based and can detect coronavirus protein at 1 picomolar within 10 seconds, I guess. So the one thing I really observed that a material plays a very important role, not only to bind with an antibody, but also to amplify signal, which can be detected using an appropriate transducer. But again, most of the materials are in practice for making efficient sensor are not green. They are absolutely not green. So we are making efforts over there. We can make, for example, my last work is based on graphene, but there are a lot of reports are available where graphene can be synthesized using bio sources. And also we can make them biocompatible as well. So at the same time, we are using bio waste to make nanoparticles, and these nanoparticles can be used as a platform for the detection of any targeted biomarker. So this is my approach. I'm using bio-derived nanoparticles for sensing applications. So this part is new to my research field, and I am thankful to Yogi again and Dr. Chaudhary from PU. We are exploring green chemistry-based metal oxide for the detection of pollutant. First application can be the detection of pollutant, or if these nanosystems are have excellent catalytic properties and can degrade water contaminants. Second focus. And third focus, can we do both at the same time? If we can do both at the same time, then this is fantastic. If we have a material synthesized by green chemistry, can detect a water pollutant and also eradicate that water pollutant based on its catalytic properties, then this material can be used for making filters, membrane, textile stuff to control pollutants in water, and at the same time to improve the quality of water, which is the basic unit of our life. We cannot survive without water. So in this direction, we have projected the need of green chemistry, because every day we deal with food and water a lot. Food is getting contaminated because of using fertilizers, pesticides, and we are unable to control this. At the same time, water is also a very important factor of our life, which came from natural resources. We process it, make it contaminate, then this goes to ecosystem, and this affects our food cycle. And also, not everyone has accessibility of pure water. Some part of population of the world every day drinking contaminates water. They cannot afford clean water. So how we can solve this problem? This is very serious issue. So today I will keep my focus towards water aspects, and we have seen that metal oxide can be useful for water quality assessment and water quality management, because metal oxides are, of course, nanostructures. They can be synthesized using various ways, and they can be tuned. Their properties can be controlled. The surface can be controlled. The size, shape can be controlled. But the only issue is that, is this safe to make metal oxide nanoparticles? Sometimes no, and sometimes yes. So my focus is, or the focus of my team is to explore that side. If we have safe metal oxide of desired surface functionality and desired, I would say, catalytic property, or their stimulation responsive nanosystem, they are safe, biologically accepted, do not affect our cellular system, even can be digested easily, that will solve the problem. And then these nanoparticles can be the part of technology where we can introduce green chemistry, green technology. In fact, we can develop green analytical approaches. So this is also the focus of our ongoing research. So I think I'm already talking a lot, and let me wrap this up. So in this direction, we have first silver oxide cube looking nanosystem, which were synthesized in lab using a very simple co-precipitation method. It's a very less time taking reactions, and we have characterized these nanoparticles using analytical tools. And these silver oxide nanoparticles, we can see that they amplify signal in very impressive manner. And not only we just characterize them, we detected BPA, which is a serious problem in our plastic manufacturing, and that BPA also causes cancer. So we detected BPA using these silver oxide nanoparticles, and we used we make this sensor in a very cost-effective manner. We just use a simple platinum electrode, make the film of the silver oxide nanoparticles, dip the electrode in water, and detected whether BPA is there or not. Not only just we used like fabricated sample, we tested the selectivity of this sample with reference to different ions and with reference to different interferents. We got very selective response. So in this series, we make another system, which is a nano composite, because we would like to improve the performance of silver oxide and also improve the stability of silver oxide. So we need a photocatalytic material so that we can also improve the functionality of silver oxide in different manner. The first focus is, let's use zinc oxide. And over there, we detect dinitrotoluene. Again, this is a very simple process, beaker-based synthesis in the lab. No heavy stuff, no high temperature calcination, no many days synthesis. And we characterize them using analytical tools. And let me go fast because of lack of time. We also detected dinitrotoluene at a very, very low level. And this pollutant is very serious to our health system. And this sensor is not going to cost more than, I would say, less than, I would say, 1 penny, according to Indian US currency. This testing is less than 10 minutes, cost 1 penny, and we can detect whether my water has dinitrotoluene or not. Again, the testing is validated using interference, and we do not see any effect of interference. Of course, there is a reasoning of selecting these materials, but I don't want to go to the detail of this scientific part. So this work is very much close to my heart. We make the same nano composites, and this nano composite was made in the lab using beaker-based approach. No toxic solvent was used. It is water-based synthesis, and this silver zinc oxide composite first detects 4-nitrophenol, and at the same time, this is a very good catalytic material, also degrade 4-nitrophenol and methylene blue. These testing were validated and optimized with reference to well-known interference. We use different water source like river and hand pump and sewage water. And we also made artificial samples to test unknown concentration. And also we did ICP-MS studies to validate the finding of the sensors. And its photocatalytic properties were tested against methylene blue and 4-nitrophenol. We see that over the time, 100% pollutant was degraded as we expose light on that. So, and one of the very important points, maybe I will take 1 more minute here, is the air quality. So I'm more worried about the indoor air quality. We talk a lot about pollution, but outdoor pollution, we are not aware enough to understand the side effects of indoor air pollutions. We have a lot of VOCs came from furniture, cooking. We have microorganisms, we have mold, we have bacteria, we have viruses inside our home. And recently it has been proven that coronavirus spreaded indoor through droplet method. The droplet, which are very small in size, sit on the particulates, which is higher than 2.5 micron, and they can be inhaled by the people. If we think about in early stage, coronavirus spread it very rapidly in hospitals. It was because of their air circulation system. So people were sneezing in the hospital. These micro droplets come into the contact of airflow and inhaled by a lot of people. So another point, I am focused on indoor air quality. So for this project, I am working with Molecule Incorporation, which is an air purifier manufacturing company in Tampa. And their focus is indoor air cleaning. And their technology is based on PICO. It is photoelectrocatalytic oxidation. So they have a nanosystem in their filter, which trap the air pollutant because of the membrane size factor. And when they stimulate all these membrane through UV light. So these photocatalytic materials then destroy these bioorganisms. So first there is capture, and then they destroy the bioorganism in the air. And this has been proven that indoor air quality market is going to be in trillion in next 10 years, according to the predictions. And this technology is very well accepted in science community because the founder of this technology is Dr. Yogi Goswami at USF, and the R&D is headed by Dr. Jaspreet Kaur. And fortunately, I'm working with both. And this is also my focus to make more efficient nanoparticles, which can be used as a part of air purification technology. So with this note, considering the seriousness of air quality, and as a member of Engineering Institute, we realize that we are lacking platform where inventor and investigators sit together and talk. So to make this possible, we established a foundation with name ASIRE, Academy of Scientists for Industrial Research and Education. And we have a magazine with name Air Innovation and Research. If you have any blog, you want to write anything, please let me know. And our thoughts on coronavirus were appreciated by WHO. Yogi is also the part of that. And thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for a very interesting overview about different materials. In principle, the talk is open for questions. Please let me know. Yeah, was Günther?
Oh, I was not, but yeah, okay, I can ask Chris. Okay, thank you very much. Very interesting talk. A lot of material, of course. I was just wondering, I mean, we are, in the beginning, you were talking about new recipes for making nanomaterials in a green fashion. And I remember a little story about carbon nanotubes, that carbon nanotubes became very toxic because the way people were making it was a very cheap way, but then they made very dirty carbon nanotubes. So I was wondering, all your nice recipes to make these nanoparticles better in green, how find those recipes the way to the producers? Could you use your ASIRE platform or this AIR platform or what you have there?
Yes.
In
yes.
order to give this further and so our work becomes
Absolutely,
a little more safe.
Absolutely. So the material I presented here, they are open for business. If anyone wants to have these materials, we have a nice network through ASIRE to promote them. And through ASIRE, we have very often very selective webinars. And one is going to be on October 3rd, where we will be talking about this indoor air stuff for viruses and its infection. So this is the main role of ASIRE. We connect people with people so that we can deliver that we have, but we don't know where this can be used. And many people have a very good problem to work on, and they have finances, but don't have a good material. So this is the role of ASIRE. And because of ASIRE, some group are coming up, and we know in our best capacity, we are providing them consultancy, as of now free, no charges. And things are coming up nice in terms of promoting usefulness of green chemistry in sustainable manner.
Yeah, thank you very much. I also, are there any more questions? I do have a few questions at least. That when you were talking about this nano carriers into the brain, was there any thought about the future history of this nano carrier? Because it was.
Yes, I would say in terms of future, I mentioned that these nanoparticles are capable to produce electric field and acoustic at the same time. And this is based on exposure time and the amount of magnetic field we are applying. I believe that I'm looking for good collaboration in this. If we can use these nanoparticles for the treatment of Parkinson, then I believe that this will work 100%. So we just inject these nanoparticles directly to the bloodstream through a normal injection. This particle will go to the brain within 1 hour or maximum 1 hour and 30 minutes. Then we will apply this stimulation. This stimulation is not more than 30 minutes. So overall procedure is gonna be only 2 hours. after having optimized conditions, we can treat Parkinson in personalized manner. Maybe I need more dose than you may require. So we can control that based on patient history. And I'm projecting these nanoparticles because we have tested the effect of these nanoparticles in monkey for 30 days. We could not do more because of financial problem, to be honest, but we did not see any side effect or noticeable side effect in this setting. So the future is bright. Yes, we can replace these nanoparticles, having more optimized studies so that we can have not only two component system, maybe we can have one component system, which can be easy to make. Rather than 3 days, we can make in a day or maybe lesser time. That can be the future of this nanoparticle.
Yeah, thank you very much. We are actually running out of time, but we have a lot of questions. I always think about that when we are putting several multi-functions together at one single platform, and then which function is going to work first, how to decide, and if we need some other molecules. So I think we have got a lot of questions to discuss in future. Are there any more questions? If not the case, then I would like to thank you very much, Ajit, for a very nice talk, and have a nice day ahead. So I would like to invite now to Dr. Hoi Jun Kim from DGIST Korea. So good evening, a very good evening again. And Hoi Jun Kim is studied in US at Johns Hopkins and University of Illinois. And afterwards, he was doing PhD at Urbana-Chem. After spending few time in US at Carnegie Mellon, he moved back to DGIST to establish nanomaterials lab-based devices group. And he has been focusing more onto the green materials, waste recycling, and based on those materials, devices and sensors and energy harvesting technologies. So with this, I would like to invite you for the talk, June.
All right, thank you so much for a nice introduction, Professor Mishra. I'm very glad to present my work at this wonderful conference, and I feel even luckier because I'm presenting right now after the Professor Kushik, who gave us a very good introduction to green materials, synthesis, and its possible application for biosensors and coronavirus detection. So in this talk, I'll be talking more about energy. It'll be scavenging a mechanical energy or waste mechanical energy using the functional nanomaterials and some simple nanogenerator devices. So before I move on, I'd like to give a very brief introduction of my institute. So this is the Korean Peninsula, and we have 4 IST or Institute of Science Technologies, which is governed by the Ministry of Science and Technology in Korea. I believe you may have heard about the institute called KAIST. So DGIST is the youngest member among these 4 IST schools. Our campus is small, but it's very brand new and has a wonderful facility. And I'm right now sitting in this building right now, and we have a very nice clean room, a materials analysis lab, animal lab, supercomputing center. So it's also a very brand new school, but we are rapidly growing. So now I'm going to show you an even better view of campus. So I believe this is the new campus of the SDU, and this is the very nice view of the city. If you're living in Sonderborg, maybe you may not have to really worry about the pollution or pollutants, but and life will be perfect if entire globe looks like just like this. But in fact, there are a lot of things going on, and as Professor Kushik also mentioned, the indoor air pollution, outdoor air pollution. So this is actually the view of South Korea, Seoul, and it's really bad. And there's also a very large amount of waste being generated every day from industry, from households, from factories. And recently, the number of the medical waste has been skyrocketed because of the COVID. Like all those vaccination requires a single-use syringe, and also gloves, masks, which are not biodegradable, and it actually requires an extra step of treatment, which requires a lot of economical and also a labor. So I believe the most attendee are much more expert than I am about the renewable energy, but people has developed this new technology about this renewable energy sources, because we all know that fossil fuel is not going to last forever, and it is also a major source of pollution. But in fact, we were able to raise up the amount of energy produced up to about 10% of renewable energy. These includes solar power, hydro or thermal energies, wind power, geothermal, biomass, all these, along with the battery technology and also fuel cells. So these fields are rapidly growing, but we are still way behind because we have large gap to fill. So if I talk more about the recent arising technologies for the carbon neutrality, of course, these people are trying to develop more powerful, rapidly charging and eco-friendly batteries. There is also very large business sector growing in battery recycle, hydrogen or fuel cell technology, and also the solar or wind power is also very promising, and it's already making a very huge economical impacts. There is also this interesting field called the energy harvesting. So if you are sitting in, maybe you are sitting in your apartment or in your office, there is this light, there is this flow of air, there is a beating of your heart, and maybe you are shaking your legs, I don't know, but all these energies are happening in form of mechanical, optical, thermal, or even in magnetic. And people are trying to capture these waste energies and convert them into a meaningful electrical energies for following applications, such as low power electronics or wearable devices. And also people are trying to integrate these harvesting technology for extreme environment monitoring, where the people cannot really reach. So battery cannot be replaced, or the maintenance of the solar panel is not possible in these cases. So people are trying to install these energy harvesting based sensor networks in these environments. Also, I believe in Europe and also in Korea, there is a large push for building smart factories, smart buildings, more eco-friendly, energy saving, and it requires a lot of sensor nodes, measuring temperature, humidity, air quality, human presence, also the intensity of Wi-Fi signal. All these requires a sensing, and people are trying to develop a self-power sensor nodes integrated with the wireless network system. So to build the next generation or develop the energy harvesting technology with the actual economical impact, we should focus on developing a new, more efficient energy materials, new design of the devices, and also the integration of AI or equivalent IoT technology for signal processing, signal transmission, and also a smart decision-making depending on the situation. So if we compare this energy harvesting market compared to other existing markets such as batteries, fuel cells, solar power, as you can see, the market size is very, very minimal compared to all these technologies. But energy harvesting market is growing rapidly with the over 20% of annual growth rate. And it produces about a sub-milliwatt power, which is sufficient to power low power electronics or sensors, which requires a sub-milliwatt power. Batteries and fuel cells, solar power can be used for more practical uses, providing electricity to households, vehicles, or heating or cooling of water, right? But if you look at this product life cycle, energy harvesting is just starting, and the number of publication is really rapidly rising these days. And there are many world-leading groups working on this field. The good thing about the energy harvesting technology is that there are very, very many sources which can be transferred or which can be converted into a meaningful electrical energy. However, currently it is low efficiency compared to the device size or the packing factor the produced energy is desired, and also the overall power generation is not as high as other technologies such as batteries or fuel cells. But if you look at this existing technologies, they are costly. They also require a large amount of money for installation or maintenance. They also possess some safety issues. So there are some large push in this field. So there are many effects. Some people work on converting temperature gradient into energy. Some people working on magnetic field into energy, but our group is more focusing on scavenging waste mechanical energies. So there are two different effects that we are focusing on. The first is the piezoelectric effect, where the mechanical strain or stress changes the internal electrical polarization of the material and produces electrical signal. Or there is also a triboelectric effect, where there is a charge accumulation at the two different surfaces when they come into contact and separated. So there is also a constant generation of electricity in this area. So for tribo, if you touch your desk with your hand, the surface potential of your hand and desk is different. So actually there is a very small amount of electricity being generated by that simple contact and separation. And if you design the device well or select the material with a good combination, then you can actually use or collect a meaningful amount of energy for actual practical uses. But so like, what do we use in our group, right? So obviously our group uses the piezoelectric nanogenerator and also triboelectric generator. And for materials, we are focusing on using the grid materials, or at least the biocompatible or eco-friendly materials, such as the lead-free perovskites for both piezo and tribo devices. For piezo, we are also working on bio-wastes such as cellulose of plants. We are also working on a biocompatible flexible composites such as PVDF, and also some piezoelectric powders or composites or both. For triboelectric generator, we are using metal organic frameworks or laboratory waste. And we are trying many different materials, because in tribo, people are still trying to discover the good combinations of materials. So we are also exploring many possible materials. And our fabrication approach is definitely not as safe as what Professor Kaushik introduced before, but we are using help of the additive manufacturing, mechanical chemical method using either ball milling or the kitchen grinder even. We are also doing room temperature solution-based method or high temperature calcination method, depending on what type of material that we are using. And so our student just goes to grocery stores, buy some fabrics or rubber, maybe find some good useful trash in a trash can, or go to lab, because there's always something no one knows what it is lying in the lab. So the first one I want to share is the piezoelectric materials in nature. So as I said, the piezoelectric effect is the effect that the generation of electrical energy due to the change in electrical polarization when you apply stress in a certain material. And such piezoelectric effect is maximized in highly crystalline structure, because all these materials are highly crystalline, ordered, and has a directed electrical polarizations. So very well-known piezoelectric materials are quartz or ceramics based, but people also has found that there are also many biological parts inside our body, muscles, bones, DNAs, or even our some of the tissue. They also have some crystalline or ordered structures, which generates very, very low amount of piezoelectric effect. There was also a very large amount of research in India and in China trying to utilize this piezoelectric effect in plants such as bamboo, sugarcane, coconut, or even leaves, because the cellulose, if you look into the cellulose structure in plants, they consist of cellulose fibers, but also the crystalline regions which have a very highly ordered electrical polarization. So even the plants are really soft, if you look into it, there is this crystalline rigid part which is in charge of piezoelectric effect. Of course, their piezoelectric coefficient or conversion rate is not as good as the ceramics, but still they're useful. So we decided to use the coconut husk. So coconut husk, if you look at the coconut, I never had a chance to open coconut by myself, but if you watch movie, people will try to like throw them in the wall or try to use the rock to break them, and then they peel off forever until get into the core, which is edible or drinkable. So this coconut husk is a very large amount of waste, and in Southeast Asia, there are like thousands of tons of coconut husk producing every day. I'm sorry. So we were able to collect this coconut husk, and we dried them in a just convection oven, and we made a powder of it. And what we did next was that we combined this coconut husk powder with the piezoelectric polymer, the PVDF. We just simply mixed it, and then we cure them in an oven. And what you get is that coconut husk and this PVDF composite film. This film is flexible, is also bendable, and it can be also pulled by applying an electric field and vertical direction. So you can make this film type piezoelectric device where the electricity is being generated when it is pushed, stretched, or bent. And we try to measure the output as the function of the coconut husk, the concentration. And I'm sorry, these are on a device name, but I believe the first one was the 0%. And then we used, I'm sure this one is 7%. So interestingly, the output increases as we put more coconut powder, but at a certain point it decreases. So the reason for decreasing is that if you put too much powder inside this composite, it becomes brittle. It loses its original like polymer softness, mechanical property, and also there is this uncontrollable accumulation of this powders. So we are just grinding them using the manually. So the powders are not that fine. So that I believe that is also another reason. But the overall power density was about 0.3 microwatts per centimeter squared, which is very, very low compared to the AAA batteries or those disc batteries in our wristwatch. But they are fully capable of doing some self-part event detection or environmental sensing. So what we did was we put this device inside the mask, and we and our student breathe or cough in certain occasions. And whenever it's breathing in or breathing out, there is this movement of mask, and you can actually get the meaningful electrical output, which follows your breathing pattern. And our collaborator performed this one-dimensional wavelet transform to analyze the irregularity of the breathing pattern. And we were able to identify a regular and irregular breathing pattern among the different person. Of course, we didn't try this in hospitals. So some of our, we made like some of our students run really fast and wear this mask and breathe heavily or in different occasions. But we have shown that even though this can replace the existing power sources that can be used for self-powered mechanical sensors. Next is the lab waste recycled triboelectric nanogenerator, and this work was actually a collaboration with Professor Mishra and also Dr. Rubin. So if you look at your lab or your even in your kitchen or your car, in my car there's a lot of waste, a lot of trash, and if you look at them, there are many different types: plastics, glass, maybe some liquid, papers, toilet paper. Right? All different wastes are there. And in laboratory or in hospitals, there's large amount of waste because many components are single use. And the worst part is that they cannot be just thrown away in a trash can. They require special care. We have to put them in a special container and send it to the special farm to burn them in a very specific location. So it's a cycle of like all the monies and also waste. Burning them generates also a lot of CO2. So our idea was that why don't we select the right materials and make a good combination of materials and use them to build a triboelectric nanogenerator. So if you look at here, this is the triboelectric series. So triboelectric effect depends on the surface potential difference between two different materials, because it basically It depends on the electrostatic and also the triboelectrification effect on the surfaces. So if you select some material as positive as possible and some material as negative as possible, when you make a contact and separation of those two combination, you'll get the highest output. So one of my students, she went into our lab and we didn't artificially generated this trash. We just collect them in our trash. And there are a lot of things, like cotton, plastic, foam, glass, right? So we built a simple vertical contact mode triboelectric nanogenerator. And we have, so there is this structure, and we put springs. So whenever they come in contact, it can be separated by itself. And there are these electrode materials using the aluminum foil. And we have a plastic or PET acting as the negative layer. And then we changed this positive layer with the various type of waste that we have collected. So, so what we did was that using the plastic, we can actually melt this plastic and extrude them in the wire shape, and we can put them into the 3D printer. And we can just use the polymer source and we can print a structure. So we are able to make the device using this 3D printed recycle of plastic. And many people are trying to recycle polymers, even ceramic powders, and using them for additive manufacturing. So we have compared a lot of different materials such as glove, cotton, paper, aluminum, and glass. And as you can see, depending on the materials combination, we were able to get different outputs. And in this case, we were able to get a few microwatts per centimeter square. Again, this may not be sufficient, but they can be used for event detection, right? So what we can do is we can put them in different locations, in lab, in chair, on your shoe, on a door, right? And whenever you open the door or sit on the chair, it'll generate a meaningful signal. So we can be used for intruder detection, or we can just collect the energy from walking. So that was the overall concept. And also to showcase the use of our device in actual low power electronics, we built a very simple rectifier and capacitor based circuit to charge the capacitor using this device. And we use the stored energy to power the human tracking device. This is one of our students, and she wore this a necklace, and she was running around the campus. She was walking around. And what we did was we collect this energy with the linear motor, and then we can turn on the clicker right there. And then using the cell phone app, we were able to detect the exact location, which was in our building. Of course, we were only able to run this tracker for about a few tenths of a second, but it was a good demonstration that we can actually use this for a meaningful approach. So, and I think I still have about 3 minutes. So among many other nanogenerator works, I wanted to introduce our recent work in nano energy. So we are also working on combining these two effects and making the piezo and triboelectric nanogenerator. So before, when people were trying to combine these two different techniques, they built individual piezo device and another and different tribo device, and they just connected them in series and said, oh, this is hybrid system. But that is not really I believe that is good approach, but it's not the best approach. So our approach was, why don't we select a good material with the good properties for both piezo and tribo effect, and build a single device which can enjoy both piezo and tribo effect. So we tried this internal hybridization concept. So we used the high temperature calcination process to make this perovskite powder. It is the bismuth titanite. It has a ferroelectric property, so it's a piezoelectric. It is also colossal dielectric, or very high dielectric constant or relative permittivity. So that property helps improve internal polarization and also enhance surface charge density, because surface charge is a function, is proportional to the relative permittivity. So when they make in contact, these composite film will get pushed or strained or stressed. And when they get separated, there'll be this generation of triboelectric energy. So we did this somewhat internal hybridization of two different techniques. And we changed the weight percentage of this bismuth titanate nanopowders. And we built a comparable single PENG device and also tribal device. And we were able to find out that this internal hybridization resulted in about a twofold improvement in voltage and also much larger improvement in current. And we also were able to charge the commercial capacitor. So we built this simple like golf ball type. So our original idea was build this device where there are two nanogenerators and this golf ball. And our plan was to put this in a swimming pool or in a bath and artificially make the wave and collect the energy from the natural oscillation. But maybe we should have gone to a seashore, but we didn't have time. So we just moved this thing using the linear motor. And whenever you're doing motor, this golf ball moves with the inertia and it can collect the energy. And depending on the acceleration or the speed, we are able to also collect a large amount of voltage in the order of hundreds or 200s, and also a meaningful amount of current. So okay, I think I'm right on time. So I just wanted to share this concept of energy harvesting using nanogenerators. Of course, there's a long, long way to go to replace the batteries, but I think we don't really have to replace the existing energy solutions because with the advancement of semiconductors and MEMS and sensor technology, all these sensor nodes or devices, they also require very, very minimal amount of power, including the IC sensor node, also the wireless communication. They also require everything can be packaged in milliwatt regime. So I think our power source can be used in that direction, but also for some meaningful self-powered sensing and also event detection. So all this beautiful work was primarily guided by Sugaru Hajira and Manisha Sao in my lab. Also Hangyam Kim and KT, they also joined in this team. And these are the four guys working on these materials and nano devices. And I would like to thank Professor Mishra and also Dr. Ruben for being a good collaborators. And also I'd like to thank my funding sources. So, okay, thank you everyone. Thank you for your attention.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kim, for very nice talk about tell us how we can use the waste materials into certain kind of good materials and for good purposes. The talk is in principle open for a few questions, quick questions if there are. Yeah. Ajit, you have something?
Yes, I have a note. The particle presented by Dr. Kim are really good, and this procedure is better than mine, to be honest. The one I optimized for magnetoelectric nanoparticles, and I believe that the system you have, which is ferromagnetic and piezoelectric, can be useful for drug delivery and also some biomedical applications too.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you very much. Yes, so we used to synthesize carbon nanotubes or graphene using the CVD process, and we did a little bit of hydrothermal synthesis, but these new students came and they knew this calcination and also room temperatures synthesis of lead-free perovskites. And while we are looking around, there are a lot of economical and a fossil way of making metal organic frameworks, all these materials, and ball millers are like tens of thousands of dollars, but you can do a similar quality powder using the kitchen grinder or even in manual if everything is right. So the good thing is that there are large groups working on this field and they are not afraid of sharing their secret recipes. So we are trying to learn and digest as much as possible and explore all these materials. So maybe we should also take a close look at your work as well, Professor.
Yes.
Good
job.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, who's going to
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for a really interesting talk. And I think using human energy is definitely a very good idea. And there are many approaches, and we could discuss very long about that aspects. I would like to discuss a little bit another aspect, and that is about these self-powered sensors, which are also extremely important, especially in not so civilized areas. But one of the things that, and we are working also, Morten, he's no longer here part of this auditorium, but he's working also on photovoltaic self-powered in some way sensors, which are apparently also important. But especially if you are sending these sensors to somewhere where you have no chance actually to exchange them, and you have no chance to check whether they are working or not, you are relying on a very long lifetime. Did you make any studies on that, in terms of robustness of your nanogenerators or
yes.
lifetime of the nanogenerators and so on?
Okay, so the energy harvesting, the lifetime, it's a mechanical component, so it'll be not as long lasting as a semiconductor or electrical devices, to be honest, Professor. And also, like the using of the self-powered sensors at extreme, like non-civilized or like in the Arctic area, sounds cool and can persuade some of the grant givers, but in reality, even though the sensors are working, we have to collect the data. And to check whether these sensors are working or not, we have to physically be there, or we have to constantly get this electrical signal. And if you look at this sensor system, the largest power consuming part is the signal transmission. So that is why these devices only exchange data, not 24/7, but in a given durations. So the very interesting concept I came across in another conference is that they put this devices, self-powered sensors, and they are just like they stay in a sleep mode. And whenever this drone comes around using the near field communication or like the very near field Bluetooth, it wakes up the sensor and collect the data, and this drone gathers all the data and comes back. So that kind of concept is, maybe it still sounds like a sci-fi movie, but it's still, I think it's one of the possible solution. So I'm afraid that to say that the power generated by these nanogenerators are not sufficient to support such long distance wireless communication. So that is another part. Yeah.
Yes, but are you sure you're using the state-of-the-art technology for that? I mean, if you look at NASA, if you look at where you can signals from and still get something reasonable about, I don't know, Pluto or some very far distance object, you get nice images and everything. So that's just fantastic. Of course, on Earth, it's more difficult because you have so many stray fields and so on. So the interplanetary room is probably easier, but still, I think there are lots of tricks that are used. Can we not try to use these tricks also on Earth? Because the surveillance, now we have heard in the morning about the Arctic problems and so on, surveillance in these areas of the Earth you cannot easily get to would be very important. And sending out these sensors with drones, yeah, why not? But you should not have a situation where you have to drive around with your drones and collect data or things like that. That should be a little bit more clever.
Yeah, so I know that U.S. military, they're also trying to make like not active like sensors, like passive sensors, consist of mechanical components. When the temperature changes, it bends because of thermal expansion. So it switches and it just shoots out one single signal. It's like a primary battery, not secondary battery, just used for a single time. And they just shoot them in an airplane, so they kind of like floating around and just land wherever. But whenever there's a vibration or erupt like temperature change, then they just shoot a single signal, and then they just do it, and they're like done. So that was also another concept that people were looking into it, like near zero, like zero power, like passive, purely like passive device with the mechanical components. That was also another sensor technology. Yep.
Very interesting. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you very much. I have many questions in general, but I think we are running out of time. Often when we are handling with new materials, we are little bit mixing up between piezoresistive and piezoelectric behaviors together. It is not a very well-defined boundary, even not being an expert. So how far you are into the piezoelectric business as compared to piezoresistive business?
I mean, in our group or overall, like?
Yeah, more or less these devices you have presented.
Okay. So I think like the piezoelectric and triboelectric. So if you think about the like batch fabrication availability and also the device the volume or the stability, the piezoelectric is much more, it's much more economically ready. There are already commercial products out there installed in, and there are this like bulk piezoelectric ceramic generator, not nano generators. And also there are also a lot of piezo plus straight magnetic field collecting technologies out there. There are very few successful technology about Tribo. When you go to this like a gym, there is this bicycle with no like, electrical connection, but when you pedal, it turns on. It's basically based on one of the energy mechanism is this brush friction and your wheel and the wheel case. So maybe that, but people are also very looking into this Tribo. Actually, there are many people now working on the single electron mode Tribo. So when you have this platform like single surface, and when you flow water or salt water is even better because there are ions inside of it. There's just continuous generation of electricity from the water flow or the wind flow. So many countries, especially in like I believe in Netherlands and also US and also in Canada, they're also looking toward this triboelectric effect between solid and the liquid or the fluid interfaces. So there's also another direction. So I don't know, after 1 year, I'm not sure what's going to happen if I know I'll buy the stock of that company, but I'll be honest with you, it's coming, and I think it has a bright future ahead of it.
Yeah, so thank you very much for a very wonderful talk. I would like to conclude this session that we, from both the talks, we have learned different approaches, and I think now these approaches are coming up much way forward in order to compare themselves with the conventional methods. And I think we should look back to our kitchen and the lab and see what we can do with the simple tools rather than complicated tools also. So very wonderful, and we are collaborating already. So if there are any questions, we will be happy to discuss. As a last but kind of one comment, these both campuses are looking very nice, the one at Florida and the one at DGIST. And when is it possible, we should try to have physical kind of meeting on these campuses. And you are more than welcome. You are kindly invited to be in Sonderborg. Like you said, we are also located at a very nice place. So with this, I would like to conclude the session. Thank you very much. Gunther, you have something to say?
Yes, no, I just want to give the word now to Thomas, because I think now we cannot waste any time. Thank you very much also from my side. That was really enlightening. And now it's up to Thomas whether we have a break or not. I just leave it to you.
Yes,
but we should try to keep the time until 5 o'clock.
I agree. Thanks a lot, Horst Günther. So we're coming now to the last session today, and now getting let's say a little bit more electrical, a little bit also more towards power electronics. And so the title of the last session is Innovative Solutions for Energy Efficiency and Storage. But the main focus of this session will be on batteries. We have 3 speakers talking about battery application, battery development, and we have 1 speaker talking about sector coupling, where also batteries are playing an important role. And so the first speaker will come from Banke APS, and if I see right, it's Philip, right?
No, it's not. It's actually Rasmus.
That's Rasmus. And sorry, then I was a little bit mixed up from the name. But then we are happy to have Rasmus Bank on board. He is the owner and founder of Banke. It's a Sonderborg company, and they're working on the development of electrical trucks. And I'm very happy to have you on board here, Rasmus. And so the online floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. I just want to make sure that I'm not muted.
You're not muted. We can see you. Maybe if you activate.
I will now try and share my screen.
Yes, this also works, and we need the presentation mode, Rasmus, then it will work out. Yeah, perfect. Super.
Okay. Well, hello everyone, and thank you very much for the invitation, Thomas, to speak here today. I had a little bit of an argument with myself about what to present. Should it be very much technology, or should it be more market focused and so on. But I actually ended up saying, okay, I will keep this very high level and talk a little bit about the opportunities and challenges I see for the implementation of electric trucks in the coming years. It is something that I feel strongly about, and something that we've worked with for quite a long period of time. To begin with, I will talk a little bit about our company, and then I'll talk a little bit about where are these opportunities, and then finally, what are the challenges for the electric trucks, because there are certainly a lot of those too. Now, beginning with our company. We call ourselves the European market leader in our little niche, which is something that we call electrical power takeoffs for particularly refuse collection vehicles and also cranes. These power takeoffs are systems which have their own power source in the shape of a lithium-ion battery pack, which is made for automotive purposes. And this battery pack can power a DC AC inverter, which can make an efficient motor run, and power a hydraulic pump, which can then be used to compress garbage or to lift heavy burdens with a hydraulic truck mounted crane or something like that. This is our core business, and it's certainly in refuse, which we are most active. And we are with these systems in operation in between 10 and 15 countries. I think it says 11 countries here. That's probably true, but only in the European Union and Norway and Switzerland. We make a lot of battery packs, and we've started to diversify also a little bit into battery packs also for transport refrigeration units, also something which is truck related. It's more and more modern to rip out the diesel engine of the refrigeration units on truck trailers and replacing them with battery systems, which actually make a lot of sense, even economic sense. We see also that markets are developing in other niches, which are becoming more and more important. I can mention other municipal vehicles like road sweepers, truck-mounted road sweepers, and sewage vehicles. But in reality, everything which runs inside the cities and use a lot of energy. We also make complete powertrains. This means powertrains which can completely substitute the diesel engine of a truck, up to 30 tons, but in principle it could also be up to 60 tons because weight doesn't really matter here. And these powertrains are more often than not designed also for a specific application where an OEM-made electric truck will not be sufficient or is not suitable. We're seeing an increasingly interesting market for these kind of special applications. So that's also a field where we are quite active. We also participate in a lot of development projects, and I've decided to highlight 3 here. One is with the Innovation Fund in Denmark, where we have who have helped us and also our other SMB partners to expand our product portfolio and get a little bit deeper into technology development, because a company like ours is essentially a systems integrator, which means that we take other people's boxes. That means battery cells from China or another country, and mechanics from a sub-supplier in this city, and wire harnesses from somewhere, and power electronics from somewhere else, and so on. But as we grow and our products become more and more dedicated, we also need to be further and further into actual, what I'll call apparatus development and production, and even technology development. And for that, we need these innovation funds. Another project is with the Danish Energy Agency called the EUDP, the Energiudviklings- og Demonstrationsprogram, where we are currently working very hard with integrating hydrogen fuel cell range extender to our full electric drivetrains. A very, very interesting project too. We're also working in an EU project also on fuel cell applications. It's called the virtual fuel cell system, which is it's actually an open source software which can be used to dimension your fuel cell systems for vehicles. Quite an interesting project too. So over the years, we've developed quite a deep knowledge in solutions for heavy vehicles. And this is the part where I switch to the polemic part of my, or rather polemic part of my talk today, because I will say that all road-based truck transport can be electrified. And I mean directly battery electrified, not necessarily hydrogen electrified. And this is a conclusion we've come to over the years, seeing the prices in batteries drop, the weight per energy unit dropping, and the technology for powertrains and so on enhancing. In front of you, you see some different types which are on the market now, which have different battery sizes. You can see ranging from 88 kilowatt hours and up to 475 kilowatt hours. There are also small unit manufacturers that make up to 800 kilowatt hours, which are still drivable and still have payload. And of course, these can then drive quite long ranges. We also see that it's possible to charge these batteries faster and faster. And in trucks, it's actually not even that necessary. I mean, a standard supercharger for a Tesla, which is, I think, 350, it says kilowatt hours here, should be kilowatt. I mean, that can put a lot of miles into a truck battery in a short period of time. And the new standard megawatt charging, which is on the way, will be able to charge these batteries in 30 minutes, which is about the time that a driver needs to rest anyway in between stops. So this is why I think that this is where the world will turn, and that's of course the opportunity. The race is over. You can forget about biofuels, you can forget about hydrogen or even electrical fuels, and it all comes down to efficiency. There's only a third energy being used in a battery electric vehicle, well to wheel, compared to any other alternative. And this simply makes the case. There's no reason to discuss anything else. If this is possible, that's what we have to do, because our green hydrogen can be better used other places in the energy system than to be wasted in an inefficient truck. So that's the whole issue. Then comes the question about infrastructure and grid capacity and so on. And also there, in my opinion, and I have to admit that that's probably where I'm a little bit low on knowledge, but as far as I can gather, the grid capacity is not a major issue. Further, there's no technology development required. We are there, all the technology is ready. It's a matter of getting the supply chains built up. It's a matter of putting the products together. It's a matter of solving the tasks. It's not any matter of new groundbreaking stuff that has to be developed. We can put it in a schematic form, which I of course have stolen. In this case from Volkswagen, I think it is, and modified by someone called Concito, which is a think tank here in Denmark. And we can see here that if we look at the decarbonization potential of the various fuels, the battery electric comes out as the absolutely most favorable if red is bad and green is good, and what is not so green is something in between. Okay, decarbonization, that's one thing, but it would go nowhere if it wasn't for the energy efficiency and also the total cost of ownership. Had the economy not been there, then I would not be so favorable about the battery electric solutions. But the fact is that we are so close to what I would call cost parity or theoretical cost parity between diesel and full electric vehicles, that I have no doubt that that's where it's going to be. It of course does entail change of behavior in the buying behavior of the fleet owners, but also in the way they calculate total cost of ownership and the way they administer and own their fleets. So it's not simple, but we will see that trucks will have longer lives in order to be cost effective, and they will also be used, I would say, in a slightly different way. But I'll not come so much into that. These are all things that we cannot achieve with the fuel cell and the biogas and the e-fuels. Now they have other advantages, and I think we will see them in the coming years. We have to also leave a little bit space open to them, because if we look at the e-fuels and the supply of vehicles, the availability, okay, they are more often not drop-in. I mean, we can use them right now, which is a huge advantage. The same goes to a large extent with biogas, and it's maybe not the case with fuel cell, and battery electric vehicles is certainly lacking. If we look at the infrastructure requirements, though, the battery electric thing, well, on the big lines, I mean, the availability of power where we need to charge these vehicles is there. What we need is the last 100 meters and the charge point. And that is something, at least in the Danish infrastructure, which the hauler or the fleet owner has to pay for himself. And that's probably an area where we should look. But again, it's tasks which can be overcome, and they're not a huge financial burden. However, if we look at fuel cell and hydrogen as a fuel, that is, in my opinion, a completely impossible task to distribute hydrogen for truck use. I mean, if you have to distribute it in lorries, you'll have to use 25 times as many lorries as you use today to transport diesel to the gas station. And you need the same kind of web, maybe even more finely woven web of tanking points, because the range of these fuel cell vehicles will not be impressive. So distribution of hydrogen in its pure form for road transport, I simply don't see it. Biogas, again, not a huge and expensive undertaking, but there is simply not biogas enough to play any significant role. So overall, the opportunity exists to electrify old road-based transport with battery electric solutions. It will give zero emissions on the tailpipe. Of course, not in real decarbonization, because it will be a direct reflection of how much green electricity is in the grid. But it will clean up the city centers. It will come to a lower cost of ownership, and the vehicles are more or less available today, in principle available today. However, there are a number of challenges. And the first and most important one is that there's no real focus for the big OEMs, that is Daimler, DAF, and so on, to build this stuff. That simply isn't. Also, it's difficult to see a real business model for charging infrastructure. That means that last mile I was talking about, to get that out to the vehicles. And thirdly, there is no lobby pushing for battery electric vehicles, because nobody benefits. Well, society does it overall, but it's very, very difficult to point at one group who really wants this to happen. That we can see, on the other hand, for hydrogen and biogas, where the oil industry is more than active and very, very toughly lobbying for those fuels to be an integral part. And why? Because it drives the sale of their core product, which is fossil methane for other uses. So this is these are the biggest challenges. And we look at the OEMs, you have to understand them, because they have to write off massive investments in Euro Norm 6 vehicles, and they have supply chains which are very, very fixed that they have to write off. And I think that there has to come some kind of incentive for the OEMs from the society to make this happen faster, because it does not come from within. Also, OEMs are actually wasting resources having to prepare for all possibilities. I mean, they don't know if the politicians are going to drive an agenda for hydrogen. They don't know if they are going to drive an agenda for gas on trucks or not. And that's a real pity. It's a distraction. We are wasting time on this stuff. And that's another challenge. So you would think that this would be an opportunity for other industries, for other players to emerge. Because in a time of radical technology change, that's when you see them, right? I mean, we got Tesla in passenger vehicles and so on. There are no technology barriers and so on. So where's the Tesla of the electric trucks? Well, it could maybe be Volta here, and there are also some other brands slowly emerging. But my theory is that this is simply too expensive for any amount of spec or whatever kind of I mean special purpose acquisition company or any other type of funding to get a real serious player going here. So that can be my theory of why we're not seeing it, but it would be nice to see one actually. However, on the charging infrastructure point, we are seeing that some players are beginning to move a little bit. So the corridors where you can charge per 400 kilometers in long haul are coming. We are also seeing that more road transport, it goes on trains, and there being a little bit shift in structures, which makes the share of long haul smaller and the share of regional transportation bigger, and all of this also pushes for the EV agenda. So that's fundamentally it. So let's summarize. I argue all road-based truck transport can and should be electrified. Vehicles need to cover about 400 kilometers of a single charge and charge fast. The race is over. There is no competition to these. The battery electric trucks will prevail. There is an opportunity for a new OEM if he can get financed. And there's also opportunities for people to come up with business models and so on for charging these trucks. And I think that more aggressive lobbying would support a rapid adoption of battery electric solutions. So this, to the point, I hope, little talk about trucks. I will open for questions.
Yes,
so you can help me get one.
Thanks a lot, Rasmus, for your very interesting talk about electrification of trucks and challenges and possibilities. And I completely share your view that most probably the electrical truck will come and that the hydrogen-driven truck will not come. One of the reasons for me is that the energy density and power density of batteries will increase in close future, near future, and this will also extend dramatically the range. But nevertheless, we need a charging system. We have a nice charging system already established for the private cars, but we need it, as you said, also for the trucks. And this is a political issue. And I think when we now see also changes in governments right now in Germany, as you might notice, that there will also be most probably a push in that direction. So this will help you, I believe, in establishing your business. Okay, is there any question from the audience? I can't see a hello, yellow, blue hand here. Then again, Rasmus, thanks a lot. Oh, Thijs?
I have a question, yes. I read an article from Norway the other day telling that supercharging of batteries is destroying the battery. It's simply going into metallic phase. Is that correct?
Yes.
So that is a major issue, I think.
It used to be a major issue. But what happens is that the lifetime of the battery decreases. However, the materials are so good now that you can more, and the experience is so much that you can predict what the lifetime is going to be and base your business model depending on supercharging. And it's clear that if you need only to supercharge, I mean, you can halve the battery life but you also use the battery more intensively. So this will be in special applications. But it's clear that the more you are dependent on supercharging for your application, the more difficult the business case becomes.
Yeah, but you will be supercharging the trucks, otherwise it takes too much time.
Yeah, but actually not. I mean, today, charging a battery with 1C, that means charging it completely in 1 hour, is actually not even considered supercharging, but it's enough for trucking.
Okay.
And another comment from my side, we know that temperature control while charging is super important. And when you see the charging curves while you charge an electrical vehicle, you see that you start with a very high power load, and then you have a decay of your power, and this is all temperature controlled. And this is also linked very much to the cooling of the batteries. When you see there are two different cell designs right now. We have round cells from Tesla and pouch packs from Volkswagen. And you can cool, for example, the round cells of the Teslas much better than the pouch cells of Volkswagen. So that means if you design your cells or battery package in an intelligent way and have an intelligent cooling strategy and a control and monitor strategy, then you can extend the lifetime dramatically. This is a lesson learned from all this, let's say, Nissan Leaf, let's say, experiences when they had no temperature control in their batteries and they deteriorated very fast. Okay, is there any other question? Then I would like to hand over to the next speaker. It will be Daniela Werlich from Custom Cells. And Daniela will talk about future trends and challenges in the development of an application of customized, or will introduce to future trends and challenges of development of application of customized specific lithium-ion cells. So Daniela, the online floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much for the nice introduction. Let me try to share my slides here. Unfortunately, I have a little bit problems with the room today, but we will somehow manage to.
I will help you. So down.
That's okay. That's okay. That's okay. There is multitasking is not the biggest problem. So let me see if. I'm not sure what you can see right now.
I can see your screen now when you press the presentation. Yeah, perfect.
Perfect.
Super.
Perfect.
Good.
That sounds very good. So then I just remove this small snippet here, and then I think I can start. So thank you very much for joining today, all the attendees. So my talk has the topic future trends and challenges in development of application-specific lithium-ion cells. Very long title. So at first, let me leave some few words about custom cells. So custom cells has two sites, two main sites. One is in Itzehoe, which is our R&D and development site, and in Tübingen, where we're currently at, is our production site that we are currently building up, and where we have a serious production for small size pouch cells. Custom cells also has a broad network of cooperation partners. For example, a company called eLight, which is a spin-off of a research institute and one of our colleagues that has founded eLight, and they are specifically focusing on electrolytes for lithium-ion batteries. So with these cooperation partners, we can provide solutions for the whole value chain of lithium-ion batteries, from electrodes, cells to specific applications. So we are developing application-specific battery cells due to a reason, because depending on the application, lithium-ion batteries demand for different properties. Sometimes you need high energy density, sometimes you need high rate capability. Sometimes batteries have to be very reliable because they support life-supporting systems. Other times there needs to be high temperatures, low temperatures, safety. And if all those specifications could go into one cell, then we would not have a business here. But unfortunately, that's not the case. So you cannot put every parameter in one cell. And I want to show you why that is and what we do to customize cells according to a certain specification and application. So lithium-ion batteries are built up of some materials and concepts as well. So the first is there is an anode and cathode material which provide lithium ions. So the cathode material is consisting of a material that contains lithium ions, and the anode material is able to store these lithium ions. And here is a nice picture. Let me see if I can. I'm not sure if you can see my mouse. So here you can see the cathode material that is coated on a current collector. In most cases, it will be aluminium current collector. And as I stated, this material contains lithium ions. And on the anode side, there is usually a copper current collector, really depends a little bit on the material, and a material, for example, graphite, that is able to hold these lithium ions. So the charging is then that the lithium ions are pushed out of the cathode and into the anode. And there's also a separator that just, as it states the name, physically separates anode from cathode and also prevents the electrons from moving freely from the cathode to the anode, which would be a shortcut. Everything in the cell, every pore, and also the separator is filled with a electrolyte that also contains lithium ions, and that helps to close the lithium ion conduction pathway. The electrons will be going from the outside contact from negative to positive, so that there are two conductive pathways. One is the electron conductive pathway, and the other is the ionic conductive pathway. So, as I stated, anode and cathode active material are the main components. These are the only two components that deliver energy. They either have lithium ions or take up lithium ions. All the other materials in the cell are just supporting material and will dilute, so to say, the energy density of the cell, but they are necessary. There is substrate. I already stated that there is there are conductive additives that help to maintain the electronic conductivity. There is a binder that helps to glue everything together, the active material, the conductive additives, and holds everything on the substrate. There is the packaging, there is the separator, the electrolyte, but there are also taps and other design materials. Furthermore, there are some concepts that go into this design of a battery. The overall cell design, so what shape does it have, how does it look, but also things like balancing between anodes and cathode. So the anode is always not only physically larger, but also a little bit larger from a capacity standpoint, to make sure that every lithium ion can be incorporated into the anode. Furthermore, concepts like electrode loading, so how thick is the layer of active material on the substrate, and electrode density and porosity will have a high influence on the characteristic of the battery cell. I have a small overview over not all, but some of the main active materials on the anode and cathode side. And the main takeaway message here is that there is no material that is all green in all these criteria: energy density, power density, safety, stability, and costs. And therefore, this is one of the main reasons why there are different batteries for different application fields. So everything started with the LCO, the lithium cobalt oxide, but all of us know that cobalt is not only a rare material, but also is sometimes gained by non-ethical or ethically problematic working conditions. Therefore, the recent trend is to use a material called NMC or NCM. It really depends on the overall buildup of the material. It is the same building block as the LCO. It's a lithium cobalt oxide, but the cobalt is diluted with other materials, other metals, nickel and manganese. This is done due to several reasons. First, it is more stabilized, for example, than the LCO. The expensive cobalt is diluted with more cheaper materials like manganese and nickel. And furthermore, nickel has, in comparison to other materials, a high specific capacity. So the amount of lithium ions that are able to be provided per gram, which is in batteries shown as milliampere hours per gram. And this number increases the more the nickel content increases, which is shown by these numbers here. The NMC 111 would be a 33% nickel, 33% manganese, 33% cobalt. We are now even beyond 80% of nickel, more in the region of 90% nickel, because there we find more higher specific capacities, which means less material for the same amount of energy. But there are also other materials like the LFP. We have seen that in the previous talk. The LFP has a lower specific capacity in comparison to the NCM materials, but also a lower voltage. However, it is more stable because that's not an oxide, it's a phosphate. So the binding between phosphor and oxygen is very strong, and therefore the stability of the material is higher, and we can gain high cycle stabilities. Also, costs are lower because there is no raw material inside. On the anode, on the other hand, usually carbon is used, either it's graphite, hard carbon, carbon. This material has a high energy density. You can see that here in comparison to all the cathode material, it already has a very high specific capacity. However, the lithium, when it is intercalated into the carbon, is very close to a metallic lithium and therefore very reactive. That's why the safety and stability of this material can be an issue. New materials with even higher specific capacities, like silicon, are more and more introduced into the lithium-ion battery field. You see that silicon has a theoretical capacity that is 10 times higher than the graphite that is now mainly used. There were some other specific materials like LTO, which is very comparable to these cathode materials, has a much lower specific capacity, but it's a very, very stable material where even charged cells can be opened without any problems. So what are the recent trends then in cell development? There are some main focuses or foci in recently, which are costs, energy density, charging time, and safety. And these main topics which are focused by, for example, cathodes, as I stated, with high nickel content, because of the high specific capacity and less cobalt. However, we have to keep in mind that these materials are less stable and have a higher sensitivity towards water. Silicon on the anode, I also stated that. Here we have to work with a lower cycle stability. Cells are getting larger, more and more, to gain higher energy density per cell. However, the thermal management can be challenging the higher or the larger a cell gets. Ultra thin substrates and separators are also in trend to gain higher energy densities. However, always keep in mind that the challenge remains in producibility of these materials. The electrodes are coated thicker and thicker, so the electrode loading gets higher and higher, which can result in less power density. A recent research topic is the all-solid state battery, where the liquid electrolyte is substituted by a solid electrolyte. So there is no liquid inside the cell. However, lithium metal or other high-capacity anode materials are needed to maintain high energy densities, and these technologies are in a very early stage. However, it is, however, a large focus on cell development nowadays, because there is the possibility to reach even higher energy densities while still maintaining a good safety level. So to go more into the into details here, we talked about the cathode material also already. What one also needs to take into account next to the high specific capacity is a high voltage of the material, because lithium-ion batteries are focused on their energy content, and energy is always capacity times the voltage of the cell. Therefore, a high voltage is necessary to have a good energy, and also a low price and a good accessibility of the material. So you always have to keep in mind that you will, if you want to build up a large production in gigawatt hours, you need large quantities of this material, and therefore the material needs to have a good accessibility. What is very important in cathode material is that the theoretical limitations for the standard materials are more or less reached. Therefore, the research needs to focus on new material classes that are clear beyond the energy densities that are today can be reached. On the anode side, in comparison to the cathode, low voltages are needed to maintain a high cell voltage, a high overall cell voltage. Also low prices, and the same is true like in the cathode. A good accessibility of the material and easy processing is important to build up high quantity cells. Some examples for active materials here in their voltage profile, which is important here. There's again this statement which is in the focus, that the energy is the capacity times the voltage. Here you can see a standard material like the NMC, which has a very nice slopey curve. In comparison here, a LFP material, which has a very straight curve. And you can imagine how hard it can be to define the state of charge if you have a voltage profile that is very flat. And it can be very challenging in an overall system of many cells to define the state of charge if you have such voltage curves. Other materials like the LFMP, for example, have steps and stages which also can be challenging if you have many cells that build up a overall system, because the overall system will go through a drastic drop in voltage. I mentioned the term polarization before. Here you can see a charge curve, which is the red curve for a LFMP material, and a discharge curve for the same material. And you see that the charge voltage is always a little bit higher than the discharge voltage. And the area between those two graphs is the energy loss. So the efficiency in terms of energy of a lithium-ion battery is not 100%. And most of this energy that is lost is thermal energy. So it's very important to have materials that show a good efficiency and produce as less as possible thermal energy. And here a very recent trend is the sodium counterpart of the lithium-ion battery. Here we have a very nice comparison between the lithium cobalt oxide and the polarization here. And for example, the sodium cobalt oxide, where you see that there are many steps inside the up on charging and discharging, and there's also a higher polarization, and therefore thermal energy is lost. You always have to take this into account when you are deciding on a battery type. I will not go too much into detail here, just maybe as a takeaway message. If you are looking for the right cathode material, you see that they can be very, very different depending on the material. You have to make sure that even if there is a high specific capacity, that this specific capacity is gained at a reasonable voltage and not at a too low voltage, or you will gain not much energy. And also you have to take into account that the specific capacity is stable over the cycling of the cell, and not only at the very beginning of the cycling, but also that not only at the very beginning of the cycling there are high specific capacities, but also at the end of the cycling. So such a profile here where there is a stable cycling would be much better, because you not only will lose capacity on the cathode, but you also have to balance it with the anode, so you will lose specific capacity on both sides. The higher the nickel content, the more you have a movement in cathode materials, for example, which will lead to cracking of materials and a faster aging. And therefore you need to provide, for example, materials with high nickel content need to be produced in very dry atmospheres, because they are sensitive towards water, and they need to be there needs to be a special treatment, surface treatment or crystal treatment, to prevent this cracking upon cycling, because this will lead to a faster aging and to inhomogeneous charging and discharging. On the anode side, on the other hand, the silicon, which is a trend, shows a very high volume change up on charging and discharging. And this leads to there's a so-called SEI that is formed upon formation. This is a solid electrolyte interface that prevents the solvent molecules from intercalating into the material. Because the silicon has such a high volume expansion, this SEI will break, and new electrolyte molecules can react with now bare silicon surface and build new SEI. And upon discharging, the particle will shrink again, and the SEI will be on top of this layer. And over the cycling of the cell, the impedance, so the inner resistance of the cell, will be increased, because this SEI will grow more and more. This can be prevented by special electrolytes and or modification of materials. For example, nanostructurizing materials, or special structures which is shown on the next page. This is a chart for mainly cathode materials, but it also holds true for some anode materials, that there can be nano sizing of the materials or channel structures that prevent or that directs volume changes into a certain direction. Furthermore, you can have a core shell gradient, especially for cathode materials with high nickel content, where there is the highest nickel content in the middle of the material and the lower nickel content on the outside, so that the water sensibility is reduced. Surface treatment with adhesive dry methods or wet coating can help to prevent further reactivity of the materials. It is always most important when material developers and customers that use the cells, they have to talk to each other, because it is not helpful for a material developer to develop a special treatment that is, for example, too expensive to be used by a customer. So there needs to be an interaction between the two. Also, the customers or the users of the battery cells need to know the theoretical and physical or chemical limitations of materials, just to so this interchange between material developers, cell developers, and users of cells always needs to be maintained. So I'm not sure how much time I have left.
I think we have an issue here that the last speaker, when it come today, there was an issue. So we have a little bit more time. So I think you are really your talk is really very interesting. So you have your time, Daniela.
Okay,
please continue. Thank you.
Just one second. Because there is some extra noise from some machinery outside, but I think now should be better. Some more words about what we are doing at Custom Cells here. So the process of lithium-ion battery production starts with mixing the active materials, conductive additives, binders to a so-called slurry, and then the application of this slurry to the substrate foil. And this mixing can be done in various ways. You can do this continuously, which we do on this kind of on this extrusion machine, where you have a continuous mixing of all these materials and you get a continuous production of slurry. But you can also do this in a batch size. And there we start with 1 liter and go up to 200 liters, depending on how large the production campaign is. And the application on the electrode foil, you can see that's here on the lower half of the picture. There is the bare foil, and here behind my colleague there is the application of the slurry on the of the red slurry on the foil. On the anode side, we can do that with water. On the cathode side, we usually do that with organic solvent, which needs to be dried afterwards. So there is the application, which can be done by a classic doctor blade or a slot die, or there are many possibilities to do that. We have several that we can use depending on the material that we are currently working with. Now the electrode is still wet. There is still some solvent or dispersant inside water, or as I stated, the organic solvent, which needs to be dried. This will be done with a IR drying or hot air drying. It should not be too fast, or you will just you will have dehomogeneous. So the good mixing that you have done in the step before will probably be inhomogeneous after that if you do that too fast, because the binder can migrate to the top of the layer, or if it's too slow, then it will just not be dry. And because this is a roll-to-roll process, then this would be quite messy. So it has to be done in the right way. And here we have, there is a nice video. I didn't know that. You can see it here. It's really very nice. There is the application or the applicator here. That's I think that's a slot die, and you see here the layer can I stop that? I think I can stop. You see here that there is the layer of coated material. It's wet, and there is a sensor that measures the thickness of the layer. And here you can see the overall machine. There is the bare foil. It's here it is the coating line. There is the IR drying zone. There are 2 or 3 hot air drying zones. This is our cathode coating line. We have another for anode coating. And here, after a inspection, there is there's just the winding again, and then you have a round roll process. So after that, you have electrodes, and what you do with the electrodes is now building up a cell. There is also a very nice video film here. I see. Let's start here. You can so we have a flexible pouch cell production. We can produce these, for example, these very large cells here, or very, very small cells, starting from 1 ampere hour up to 200 ampere hours, really depends. And we can do this by hand stacking or by this production equipment, automatic stacker. You see it's a set folding. There is the separator film, that is the white layer here. That is, and there is a table where the electrodes, which come from the back side here, are just, there is the anode side, the cathode side, and the anodes and cathodes are just put on the separator, and then this table just drives to the other side, and in that movement, the set folding is generated, and you always have a separator layer, an anode layer, a separator layer, a cathode layer, a separator layer, an anode layer, and so on and so forth. And you do this as much as you need to build up a cell with a certain capacity. I will just start the video again, and then you build up this stack. When the stack is finished, the separator will just be cut through, so that you have now the stack, the anodes on one side, the cathodes on the other side, and then it will be taped, just that the stack will hold together, and then you have your cell. We have a climate control production, prototype production line, where the top is then connected to the terminals, and the cell is packed into a pouch. The pouch format is very flexible. That's why we are using it for our prototyping. After that, the cell is dried and filled with electrolyte, because the electrolyte is sensitive towards air and water. In most cases, this is due to the salt that is inside the electrolyte. After the electrolyte filling, the formation starts, where the cell is first charged and discharged. Here the SEI is formed, and then the cell is more or less finished. In our production site in Tübingen, we have a fully automated process where we can build up high precision cells. This is an example cell, and there you see on the left side the high precision stacking in comparison to a commercially available cell that is much less precise in stacking. And this also helps to gain higher energy density, because you can have more space filled with electrode and don't need to have that much of a safety margin here. This was a short overview of the recent trends in cell development and what a Custom Cells is doing. And if you have questions, I'm ready to answer them.
Yeah, thanks you very much, Daniela, for your very impressive talk. It's really great to see that this kind of productions are still in Europe, and especially in close, let's say, vicinity to the big German car makers. And I heard recently that you have made, I think, a deal with Porsche or so. So congrats to that.
Thank you very much.
I think this is really important, that we still not lose the contact and the knowledge here. I studied 26 years in Münster together with Martin Winter at Besenhardt, and so there, and I'm very happy to see that this is continuing here in Germany. Is there any question from the audience? No, then I have one related to the high voltage batteries coming up right now. You know that you have the 800 volt batteries coming up. Tesla is using 400, Porsche Taycan 800, and there are some discussions about this higher voltage levels here because you have to put more cells in series. What is your opinion related to the reliability of such high voltage packages?
Yeah, as I stated, it is not only a single cell that needs to be considered. There's always a system. And if you choose materials, also like the high voltage materials, like LMNO, for example, you need to be careful if the voltage curve is very steppy, or if there are plateaus and steps inside, because your system will make a jump. And then you have not only a cell or many cells in series, but you also have electronics that work at certain voltage levels. So this needs to be considered when you want to build up very large systems. The quality is one of the main issues with large scale cell production and large scale cells, because you want to build up reliable systems, as you said, and therefore the overall quality, but not only quality, but the overall the behavior of the cell needs to be very similar. The impedance, the capacity, the temperature gain of the cells need to be very precise and reliable. And we have to learn now in Europe how to build up large scale cells with a very high quality. We have a very good and very precise equipment and machinery providers, but we have to learn from each other, from the cell development to the cell production, how to do that in a high quality and a high throughput, because it makes no sense to have a low throughput in such a production site. And then it can be done.
Okay, good. Thanks a lot again. And then we are coming to the last speaker for today. It will be Thijs Stensrum from Better Energy. And Thijs will not speak about lithium-ion batteries. He will speak about more system view and introducing sector coupling. So Thijs, if you share your screen. Or Daniela. Yes, yeah. So we see you now.
It is. First of all, thank you for the invitation. You can see it now?
Yes, but if you press the presentation mode, then
I think it is
you're
there.
You're not in the presentation mode yet.
No?
No. Maybe you can. We can see all your slides right now.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe should stop and maybe stop and start again. Something happened. But if not, I think it's not a big problem, Thijs. So I think if you increase your screen a little bit or make the slides on the left hand.
Yeah, but one moment. We'll try this one. No.
No. Now we can see
it's even worse. Yeah, sorry for this mess. That's why I tested the other day. Okay.
But the other let's say way is okay, Thijs. So if you share your screen again and share your presentation, then you can go through your slides, and it's okay. Absolutely.
Prøv eventuelt, Thijs, kun at vælge den, når du vælger share screen, så kan du vælge kun selve PowerPoint-vinduet i den dialogboks, du får frem.
Ja, men det er det, jeg ikke kan få til at virke.
Men hvad sker der, hvis du vælger share screen?
Ja, nu har jeg jo det der, sådan der. Nu vil jeg share screen.
Ja, og så skulle du gerne have sådan en oversigt over forskellige billeder, du kan vælge.
Ja, så har jeg en færdig masse billeder her.
Ja, og enten så kan du bare vælge hele skærmen, men du kan også vælge kun PowerPoint. Den viser dig alle de forskellige vinduer, du har åbent.
Er det bedre nu?
Ja, det er bedre. Nu prøver at drukke den præsentationsmodus.
Now it's in presentation mode, but you can't see that.
No.
No, it's on the other screen. Sorry for this.
No, okay, but Thijs, you can simply skip or change. We can see it and read it very easily. It's fine.
Yeah. Maybe I can even make it a little bit bigger.
Yes.
This is the maximum. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. We start. This is a more macroscopic talk about the overall energy system, and I think I'll have some of the get into a discussion about some of what Rasmus said earlier. Better Energy is company makeable, trying to engineer the sustainable future. And we do that traditionally until now through developing, constructing, operating plants. And when we say plants, it's energy parks, mainly based on solar power or photovoltaic power. But there are some constraints in that. And I have tried to put some up here to talk about what is going to happen and why are we having a new business leg in Better Energy. The Danish electricity use was in 2019 34 terawatt hour, but we only produced 29. And we are lucky because we are in a sweet spot where we can buy power from other countries, and we are well connected. And that's okay, because a natural thing, because we are only a very small country, of course. But we have a gap of 5 terawatt hour, and we have to fill that up because we need to make energy in a new way, and we will also find that burning of biomaterial and waste will probably go and be abandoned. That means that the combined heat and power plants will simply disappear as we know them today. We need to make hydrogen, not so much for transport, but for maybe for steel making instead of using coal. And we also need to use hydrogen for making e-fuels for airplanes. I'll come back to that. We will also see that there will be a reduction in transport globally seen. That's maybe my own philosophy, but it seems that we are going to buy our stuff from narrow markets, and that's probably what you mean, Thomas, when you say it's nice that we can make lithium-ion batteries in Europe. But we need to do that because we have crises, and they can be political, they can be pandemic, and it means a lot of problems in our daily life. So we will see things become smaller. One of the answers to do things in another way is power to X. which is my responsibility here in Better Energy. And this is, if you look to the west, to the left, this is the world we are working in right now. We produce mainly through photovoltaic electricity, which we put on grid, and we make power purchase agreements. That means that a company can buy green power from us. It is through certificates because we have no direct connections, but then they can buy that, and we make sure that it is coming from the sun. And then we will see us going into direct lines. We are close to doing that right now. We are also interested in EV charging because it seems that our parks are many places along the highways. So why not put up a charging station for the trucks, which and who else is running on electric power? So that's a natural way. It's also easy to make heat and cooling, but it's not that much money in that. But we will come to do that through heat pumps because we are not able to take heat out of the traditional power plants. What to do about making hydrogen, which is of our interest, is electrolysis. That means we are splitting water into hydrogen and oxygen, and we can use that. The easy way to sell it is if we had a grid, and it gives a lot of meaning because in Germany the steel industry is screaming for hydrogen, and they are going to be forced to use the green hydrogen, and we see the same picture in one of our countries where we are active in solar business in Sweden and also in Finland, where they are working a lot on getting rid of the coal in the steel industry. We can also synthesize hydrogen with other things, chemical stuff. We have the methane coming out of a bioindustry. This is not natural gas, it's biogas. And when you produce methane through all the shit, then we also create a lot of CO2, and that CO2 is today vented to the sky, and we can turn that into what we call e-fuels. The easy e-fuel is to make methane, which is actually not established in processes which are running at TRL 9 yet. We are still in the middle of the TRL curve, so that's maybe surprising because everybody talks about it, but that is a fact. And CO2 is not always taking out of the biogas. It's only when you have to put it into the natural gas grid. Ammonia is also of interest because it might be that ships are going to use ammonia for traditional internal combustion engines, which I don't hope, but ammonia is very important globally. 3 to 5% of all energy in the world is used to fertilizer, which is ammonium nitrate, and that is made through hydrogen and nitrogen. So we will have to produce it, but it seems that it is going to happen in another part of the world than the Nordic countries. So what we do here, and where we are going to talk about some of the constraints I talked about in the beginning, is that we can produce hydrogen through electrolysis. We can use only sun if we like. Then we have around 1,300 hours a year. If we add wind turbines, we can come up above 6,000 hours in our part of the world. And that means that we have a better utilization of the electrolyzer, which still is a very high capex equipment. But the main source to cost is the electricity itself. We can put it into a filling station. That's very expensive because we have to increase to 700 bar. If we put it into the common grid or store it for later processing in a kind of buffer, we can use lower pressure. I know the tanks are going to be large, but anyhow, this is a way to go. And we can also utilize the heat. Here we still have a constraint because the heat coming out of the electrolyzers are still in the 50 degrees area, which is not too good for district heating, which we would use it for. We can also use the oxygen for water treatment, for some biological processing. Today, most of it is vented from the few electrolyzers we have in the world. The interesting thing is this. Now I'm a little, missing my slide view because, here we have a full circle, so to say, and here it's interesting to talk about size. We can use the electrolyzer and make some hydrogen, which we can put into this factory here. In this factory, we could have a Fischer-Tropsch process, which can turn methane and CO2 together with hydrogen to heavy hydrocarbons. We can actually design the processes so we can make sustainable air fuel, and this is not made on olive oil and waste cooking oil as they do today, or corn. That's very popular in the US for the time being. Here it's made actually from the natural energy sources we have, and we can take the CO2 out of the air, so we don't even need to have biogenic methane. We can also make diesel, and there are many companies around the world who has processes for this, which then gives a waste. You could say it's called naphtha, but naphtha is the basis for making polymers. And in the future, we cannot make polymers out of fossil fuels, so we have to make it in this way, for example. This is a very bad efficiency process if you only see what comes out as energy in the airplane or naphtha. But when we utilize what comes out as heat here and what comes out as oxygen and heat, we can also use gray water here. We don't need to use pure water because we have to clean it quite good anyhow. But that means that we can, it is not really needed to make drinking water. This will not be a huge cost increase to put gray water into the electrolyzing system. So there are some playing ground here. We can also use main sun or the sun in the summer and reduce it, the use of it in the winter, and then play with storing more in the natural gas grid in the summer, because we have storage means for that in Denmark, for instance, and many other places. So in that way, we can control the whole chain and make the stuff whenever we have the sources available, which we need to do it. This about size, as I mentioned, that it's probably better to make ammonia in other countries like Africa and India, because they might have some deserts and more land than we have. That is also a challenge here, because today we make air fuel in big factories or refineries, and the processes are some 11,000 or 100,000 barrels a day. Whilst when we make such a setup here, we could actually make it in a small municipality and then use all the sector coupling, which is the stuff we are talking about coming in and out of the plant, and then use it fully. That means we have no energy loss. The energy we take in from nature will be utilized in these different ways without having losses. If we do it in a very large scale plant, we will have a lot of heat loss, which we cannot use because there are no people freezing in the winter. And that is also interesting because we cannot just produce so much electricity as this would take. We are talking about maybe 4 times the electricity production in Denmark of today to cope with all the need we have for fuels and process things in the future. But there are some challenges. We have to control the sector coupling. It's difficult. I didn't mention this, but this is the way we work here in Better Energy. We have to find land. We have to have a grid connection possibility, and this is not easy. And that is also a constraint for using electricity in the mobile industry, because we simply can't put the energy where we need it, because the high voltage grid in Denmark is worn out or not in place. At Lolland Falster, for instance, they produce 8 times more electricity than the grid can move away, and it is not just to fix that by cables. It is easier to make some of these processes down there. But then when we make this circle come true, we can actually establish a plant when, if it's photovoltaic or if it's a system like that, that is not the problem. The problem is to fulfill all the circles here, and we are moving onwards. And that is a part of what we call sector coupling, because if we don't have long-term agreements with the off-takers and the suppliers, this whole thing will fall down. It is not just the oil coming in. As in a refinery today, we are going to be dependent on a lot more players here. Then we have to downscale, as I said. We have to improve some processes, the electrolyzer. As we see it today, we have one company which is from 1927, and they might be at a very high TRL level, but they are, even though stating that in 3 years they will have half the cost, that means the capex. And when you can do that in a couple of years, being in production since 27, then I don't think it's too mature. And the rest of the industry is even further way back. And that means that they have to reduce manufacturing costs extremely a lot. And that is not only to find substitutes for rare metals, but it's also the way they produce it. Then we have to have a direct power coupling. That's an issue in Denmark, because the government are having taxes on using the grid. But if we make direct coupling, then it's not a problem. And that's fairly easy if we can place the electrolyzer up to a kilometer or so from the energy park. But if not, then we are in trouble. So we have to change standards and regulation. Here it's regulation to make the politicians understand that it is not efficient maybe to put all energy factories to the west coast, because in a sense we cannot use the other stuff being produced there. And standards are not established, so you cannot just buy an electrolyzer and tell the authorities that you want to put it there. It's simply not possible, because there are no fire rules established and stuff like that. Then you could talk about financing. We were the first company in Denmark who made a photovoltaic power plant, and at the same time, it was not the first. It was the first without any subsidy in any way, and it was at the same time it was done in Spain. That means that we are not. It's not where we are placed on the globe. There are other stuff or other things having influence on the financing and the efficiency of making plants. When we built the plant, it's now our own. They are under our own control. we are getting financed through real estate financing corporations, as you can see. And I think we were the first to do that in Denmark too. And that means that this is really bankable processing, where we have taken out a lot of risk to be able to do that. And this is some of the examples. The biggest plant is just these days getting opened. It's 207 megawatt peak. But that is the last one we have sold. It was sold to Bestseller, which is a clothing company. I think that is all from my side.
Yes, Thijs, thanks a lot for your talk. I think it's also very important to see that it's not only batteries are driving our, let's say, us towards a green climate neutrality, that really have to combine all available means, and that we have to think on the system level, and as you mentioned also that the banks are coming into the game as well. Is there any question from the audience? Philip? No? Rasmus, sorry.
And I'm sorry, guys, it's not because Thijs and I want a private conversation in the middle of the conference. But Thijs, I actually have a question, and I admit that it's to make a point, and there's also a follow-up question. I have absolutely no doubt that it's incredibly important that we make a lot of green hydrogen. Currently, we make, not even counting syngas, there are being at least, or let's say between 80 and 100 billion tons of hydrogen being produced every year from fossil methane or coal. And it's being made with the dirtiest possible process, with no carbon capture whatsoever. And that's 98% of that being made in this way. And we have to get it substituted with hydrogen that is made in a different way, and which of course collects as much of the waste heat and that we can use for other purposes as possible. So we have to go in exactly the direction that Thijs is showing that Better Energy is doing here. But I have actually a question. When you show the output, Thijs, of these, it's fuels which are not currently being made from hydrogen, and it's heavy naphtha, and all this stuff. Why aren't you simply substituting the black hydrogen, which would give you a much better CO2 yield than to invent new uses and then let the planes fly on whatever they're flying on? Just
yeah, that's the question of the day. If we had the grid, we would just pump it into the grid, and then it will end up in Ruhr district. It's the easiest way to do it, and it makes most sense. I think we will see that happen in Sweden quite soon. They are preparing for it much faster than we expected. They use 900 terawatt hours per year for steel industry in Sweden and Finland, and they are going in that direction. Right now, we are looking to get some payback because the price of hydrogen is in reality 3 to 10 times bigger in green hydrogen. So we need to go there, and as it was not, it was on purpose that I showed the hydrogen machine in the first instance. We don't go for automotive transport on that. It is the industrial way, but we need to have some customers who can take it away, because if we put it on a truck, it's 50 kilo per truck, and it doesn't make sense.
No, but it's we both agree with that, and I also admit that it was a rhetorical question, because I think that the reason why you need to put it in fuels like airplane fuels, instead of simply using the hydrogen for ammonium, which we already use a fertilizer, is that it's too expensive.
Yes.
And there's absolutely no way you can compete with black hydrogen. So you need to find areas which are subsidized in order to make this profitable. And that is the problem number one. we need to tax black hydrogen. Otherwise, this will go absolutely nowhere. I'm just making the point at every single possibility I get, because it is the constraint, in my opinion, to all of this.
But I think we should use, and there we might be able to, or we should ask SDU to help us, because we have to tell the government, because we cannot decide on this. We know it is the right way to go, but they don't. It's so complicated. They say,
but maybe
and then
we
they
can
are
help,
so afraid of the taxes. They lose. They cannot make this shift. And this is. I wondered when you said, Rasmus, about the why isn't there a truck company going electric? I think it is a political problem that people don't understand, even at that level, that this is needed. Sorry. It is the question of this decade.
Yes, but I think we will experience increasing CO2 taxes, which will come. And with the CO2 taxes, we will automatically have this, let's say, this streamlines going in the right directions. I'm convinced, because it will be EU law and not in Danish or German law. It will be EU law, and then automatically, if you have to CO2 taxation, all these carbon streams will be going down.
Yes.
Yeah, but it should not be allowed to make carbon capture out of processes which are running on fossil fuels. This should be disallowed. And the same making hydrogen out of natural gas should simply be abandoned, because the industry behind the traditional energy will keep on telling politicians that it's fine to make carbon capture, but it is not. We need, in 10 or 20 years, we need carbon, but we should still not take it out there or out of fossil fuels.
And we need it for purposes, so producing of polymers and medicines, etc. No?
Yeah,
and not for burn it. For me as a chemist, it's terrible when you burn these complicated molecules of oil and gas, and simply to burn it to heat. And not to use them as you have to prepare these complex molecules in the lab from scratch is really difficult.
Yes. And it's my hope, just to end this discussion, that the airplane, we will see a hydrogen solution coming before we get up in production with traditional jet fuel based on green energy, of course.
Okay, there is one more question from Daniela.
Yes.
Thank you very much for the talk. I have a very short question, just because I don't know the process. Can you use salt water for the process when upon cleaning it?
I need to take out the chloride. So and you can do that, but that's not. It's very expensive.
The thing is that sweet water, even if it is not the clearest or drinking water, is still something that is becoming more and more rare.
Yes,
and
you're
I
right.
think especially in regions where there are deserts and things like that, it's get more and more problematic. So it would be very important to be able to use salt water then.
Yes, and you can do that through reverse osmosis, but it takes a lot of energy. So it is not a good process. But you can do saltwater electrolysis direct, but this is extremely complicated, and you have to use another way to make the whole electrolyzer.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it is a very scarce process to work with hydrogen use and hydrogen processing compared to different pollutants. And chlorine or chloride is an extreme pollutant in that system.
Yeah, understood. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there any further question? If not, then I would conclude this session here, because unfortunately the last speaker, Sari, has declined on short notice. A few words to Sari. He is an ex-SDU student. He just started a startup company in working on second life of lithium-ion batteries, and I was helping him a little bit in this process. But right now he found a nice position in Copenhagen, so he has abandoned the startup approach right now. We have to accept that, and really we should cross fingers that he can continue his career. But nevertheless, I think this topic of dealing with second life lithium-ion batteries is really crucial. Also, when we see all these electrical vehicles driving around, and when they have lost, let's say, 20% of their capacitance and are already out of use, but these batteries could be perfectly still used in households or PV plants, etc. So this topic is a hot topic. Unfortunately, we could not dive into that. So we are coming to an early end today. So a little bit earlier than expected, but I hope this is okay. I would again thank all the speakers for their contributions and their interesting talks, and I conclude now this session.
Yes,
have a nice evening.
Yes,
Oh.
sorry, Thomas, you were a little bit fast. So I would like to conclude this day, actually. Thank you very much for all the sessions that we have heard. It was very interesting. And I would like to urge you also apropos this discussion that you just had to come again to the conference tomorrow morning. We will start again at 9 o'clock, and we will start with ocean-based CO2 removal in track A. Very interesting aspects, actually, from the Geomar in Kiel. And then there's a track B, which is about supporting climate initiatives by improving green innovation. So this is a panel debate talking also about sector coupling, energy coupling, and so on. So you have the choice between two very interesting tracks. Please have a look at the program. And in no way miss our panel debate, which starts at 12:30 tomorrow, which is for all together again, and which tries to summarize this short conference. So with that, thank you very much again, and see you all again tomorrow morning. Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.